Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in this lovely little planet of ours. It is me, Legal Vices, welcoming you to my Tuesday evening. It's Tuesday night, 10:06 p.m. here in Korea. Where are y'all from? Where are we all sitting here today? I know Korea's in the house. We've got Maud Rose is here. Maud Allen is here. We've got good. We've got a couple of mods. Alan and Rose. Anybody else here? Looks like that's our mod contingent so far. We'll see who drops in as time goes on. Welcome, everybody. We waiting to see where we're all from. Do our quick morning check-in. Everybody's just saying good morning. So y'all must be back in the States on the East Coast. Otherwise, it's really, really early. London, Germany, Minnesota, Norway, XCOMer great. Oh, and XCOMer kicked us off with a super sticker already. The purple hippo. Thanks for the purple hippo. That's how we roll here. Thank you for getting us off to a good start. All right. Well, what's we've got a lot going on today, and our special guest, Dani Ahn, she will be joining us in approximately 15 minutes. That's how hard she's working as a candidate for a Salt Lake County District Attorney. It is 7:07 a.m. in Salt Lake City where she's at, and she's already busy. So we're expecting her in about 10 or 15 minutes from now. We'll jump into her as soon as we get here. But in the meantime, we can do a little bit of back of house stuff and get y'all settled in for the stream. We are doing important stuff. What we're doing today is we're going to be talking about police violence. Brutality or not, that's the question that remains open. So we'll have to see how it goes. Again, yesterday we had some of the camera freezing issues. That just must be a YouTube thing, depending on where you're at, because I'm cool. I'm watching it from my end here, and everything is looking okay on my end. Must just be a YouTube thing, depending on where you're at. Some people say they don't have any problems. Some people say they do. Who knows? It's just a thing, I guess. All we can do is roll with it as best we can. And if you're having the problems with it, maybe it just takes a while to buffer in your end. I'm just not sure. But that's all I'm going to say about that. That's last time we're going to mentioning, but it must just be a YouTube thing because, well, as Rose said, it's kind of happening all over YouTube. It doesn't happen to me here. I've got a great connection, a great stream going. The speed is up to speed. So, all right, with that out of the way, you're just one of those things you're going to have to deal with. We'll have to see if it shows up on the replay. I didn't check yesterday's replay. But today, that's what we're going to be talking about. Use of force by police. That's an issue that's been in the news quite a lot recently with the Arkansas police incident that happened last week that made its way across the internet. We're going to be we have some more information on that. We'll get to that towards the end of the program. But as we go forward, today we're going to be talking specifically about two, I don't want to say polar opposite issues, but two very different incidents of use of force, quote unquote, by police in Salt Lake City, Utah. And Dani will be giving her views and opinions on that. Tomorrow, what have we got going on tomorrow? Tomorrow is a sort of a relaxing, feel-good day. We're just going to watch a video, which is Ben Chu and Camille Vasquez doing an interview with the president of the Beverly Hills Bar Association, where they talk for an hour or so about what it was like having Johnny Depp for a client, how they prepared for trial, what they thought of the trial and the media, and all sorts of things like that. That'll be tomorrow. Thursday, and we'll also talk a little bit about the Video Music Awards and Johnny Depp's appearance, which was awesome and just set the Twitter sphere just palpitating on both sides of the Johnny Depp Amber Heard fence. Thursday, we'll be watching history. We'll be going back to 1994 and 1995 and 1996, I guess. The O.J. Simpson trial. The O.J. Simpson trial was going on while I was in my second and third year of law school, 27 years ago. So a lot of you weren't even around then. So what we'll do is we'll go back and we'll watch bits and pieces of that trial over the next few weeks. Some of the important salient parts. We'll start Thursday with a little bit of a background and what led up to the murder trial, and then we'll be reviewing the opening statements by the prosecution. That's what we'll be doing on Thursday. So there's a lot of nostalgia, and the O.J. Simpson trial was sort of what started this whole court TV live streaming broadcasting criminal trials. It wasn't the first one to do it, but it gave birth to court TV. It gave birth to all of these shows that are dealing with live and as they go murder trials. So we'll see how the cameras in the courtroom have changed over the last 27 years, how the behavior of lawyers and judges have changed over the past 27 years, as well as looking at how the arguments were crafted and what led to the acquittal of O.J. Simpson. So that'll be on Thursday. We're going to start that series on Thursday. Friday, Mad's talking about O.J.'s white Bronco. The younger in the crowd may remember the Bronco chase scene from Shrek 2. That's actually part of the O.J. Simpson trial. So we'll be talking a little bit about the murders and be showing some of the more interesting parts of the legendary white Ford Bronco chase. And then we'll be doing the opening statements. Friday is a double, perhaps triple whammy. Friday, we will be doing my third F at Friday stream, where we will be talking with our second part, which is Fair and Balanced and I. We do our weekly Unexplained stream. Those two coincide. So we'll be doing the Unexplained with Fair and Balanced while I am doing my Griftapalooza, which, as you may or may not know, is essentially I just grift my heart out. And you guys buy me $100 shots. It's just in good fun. It's just a way for me to get an entire month's grifting done in one day. But we'll be having fun because Fair and Balanced will be here. And the third possible thing we'll have going on Friday is the launch of the Artemis 1 spaceship. The rocket is supposed to launch during my stream on Friday. It was supposed to launch during my stream yesterday, but it's now been rescheduled to launch during my Friday stream. And so in I guess honor or anticipation of that, we'll be waiting for the rocket launch. We'll be doing the Griftapalooza Drinkathon, and the deal we're doing with Fair and Balanced, the Unexplained, will be focusing on space-related mysteries. Things that are seen on the moon, astronauts telling stories of their encounters with things in space, missing cosmonauts, mysterious voices from space, mysterious music on the dark side of the moon. We'll be talking a lot about space and moon related things during the Boozy Legal Vices Fair and Balanced mystery stream on Friday. And next week, we've got a couple of things that are starting to take shape for next week. Next Wednesday, we'll be focusing on kind of Korea and Korea related issues. With Legal Mindset. Legal Mindset will be on my stream next Wednesday. And rumor has it that Legal Mindset may be trying to put together a direct stream. And if so, I will be participating in that eagerly. So next week, there's still a lot of things that are in motion, but we'll get them set up as soon as possible, and I'll let you know. I guess that's pretty much for the week in advance. So take care to note these times on your calendar for the next few days, and then Wednesday of next week. You won't want to miss any of this. We're gonna have some good times coming up here in the future. And the important thing now, I briefly mentioned it yesterday, and I know I mention it kind of every day, but it does seem that YouTube is going through a subscriber purge. In the last 36 hours, just about 40 subscriptions have just disappeared. And a lot of other bigger creators have had huge numbers of subscribers just disappear overnight. A lot of them are talking about it. DUI guy was making a mention of it earlier today as well. So if you have subscribed to the channel, and you know you're subscribed to the channel, do me a favor, look down there and double check to make sure you are still subscribed to the channel. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, do me another favor, and please do. These are the kind of things we do. What I've just talked about, what's upcoming, and what we're going to be doing tonight, that's what we do here every day, 5 days a week, and sometimes on weekends. So hit that subscribe button if you haven't already done so, and come back for more. And like the video. How are we doing right now on the likes? We've got 140 concurrent viewers right now and 82 likes. That means 60 of you haven't done your job yet. Get down there, hit that like button, and let YouTube know you like what's going on. Get it out there into the algorithm. The subscribes help, the likes help, and the notifications help, as well as when we're done with the stream, go back, make a comment whether it's hello, hi, goodbye, intercourse, YouTube, anything you want to put, just to put it as a comment later in the stream after the stream ends, so that YouTube will count that as engagement and put us up in their algorithms. And that will bring us right up to the issues that we need to talk about today. And again, just to reiterate, in case you're just joining us here, the use of force by police is once again in the news cycle. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say it's not as much in the news cycle as it would be if everybody involved in the Arkansas police incident last week had not been Caucasian. So thankfully there was that part of it. But there's still a lot of issues with this particular case in Arkansas. You may have seen the video. I'll see how much of the video we can look at today. If you were here when we watched it last week, you'll know we basically got shut down midstream. We just got nuked for basically talking about it. It went to 18 and only. People had to go through 2 or 3 layers of warnings to get to the stream. Super chats were disabled, and it's still 18 and over to watch the video, which is kind of in and of itself disturbing. That, I mean, we weren't sensationalizing anything. We weren't jumping to any conclusions. We weren't inciting anything. We were conducting a very careful and detailed review of a very important issue, a very important social issue. And YouTube was all over that, putting us behind layers and layers of permissions to get to see this video that we as citizens of the United States and as viewers from around the world should have a right to see. We should be able to see what happens with our law enforcement officers and how they interact. And YouTube didn't want us to do that, so we'll have to see how much of it we can do today. But as I said, there's some developments in that case. And while we've still got just a couple of minutes before we are joined by Dani Ahn, and in those last couple of minutes, we'll just touch briefly, give you a little bit of information about the 2 main cases from Salt Lake City we're going to be talking about today. One is a case where there was a domestic incident at a house in Salt Lake City 4 years ago, and it ended up with a man being shot and killed on site. And it's a very, very troubling case. We'll watch the video. We'll watch the news video on that. But it was a very troubling case because of some very, very specific parts of that police shooting. And the current Salt Lake City district attorney just within the past couple of days finally decided that he would not prosecute the police officer. 4 years went by before he made that decision. There's a lot of that seems to be going around, particularly in Salt Lake City. And the second incident that we're going to be looking at from Salt Lake City was something that just happened a week or so ago. I believe August 6th is when it happened, but they just released the body cam footage and some other related information a couple of days ago. It dealt with a man who was intoxicated And he went to a detox facility, a non-mandatory, non-custodial detox facility. He left, and he was running around in the street. He went into a local brewery in Salt Lake City and misbehaved. They called the police. The police show up. They chase him across the street. They subdue him, and he dies. So we'll be comparing and contrasting those two incidents. And then we'll take a look at the Arkansas shooting, more information. So let's dive in. And I'm just getting a message from Dani that she will be here very briefly, and she apologizes. So we will start with some of the background, and then we'll jump out when she arrives here. Some of the background for this first incident. Let's go back to Salt Lake City. And before we do that again, let me just remind you here, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification button. And as we go forward, feel free to join in the conversation. I'll try to follow the conversation as closely as possible in the stream. But the surefire way to get to ask me a question or Dani a question that will be answered, or if there's just something you want to say, if you want to make sure that people see your opinion and then I read your opinion, super chat's the way to go. There's that brings up the bright colors and lets me know that there is an important issue there. And frankly, because you're throwing money at me, I feel duty bound to read the questions and respond to them. So there's no minimum amount you have to super chat for me to read the super chat. It's just whatever you want to do. You don't even have to do it, but like I said, I'm guaranteed to see it if you super chat, super stickers, whatever. That's all the grifting I'm going to do for that part. Maybe do it in our, like I just usually mention the super chats again after about 1 hour. But so that's it for now. If there's something you definitely want to get in, please just, super chat's the way to go. Again, not required, no minimum amount, just whatever you want to do to get yourself out there. All right, going to Salt Lake City, this news story, which I will bring up right here. Here we go. Got to scroll to the top here. The grand jury declines to indict Salt Lake City Police Department officer in 2018 fatal shooting that some experts question. The officer shot and killed Pikyavit in 2018. Experts differ on whether police responded appropriately. That is current Salt Lake County District Attorney Sim Gill. A Salt Lake City officer, again, so August 27th is when he decided. So 3 days ago, after 4 years, decided not to prosecute. A Salt Lake City officer who shot and killed a man 4 years ago, milliseconds after another SWAT officer fired a less lethal round, will not face charges, the Salt Lake County District Attorney's Office announced Friday. And for me, that's one of the key features, one of the key points, is that the SWAT officer fired literally milliseconds after a less lethal round was fired. District Attorney Sim Gill said his office asked 3 outside law enforcement experts to review the 2018 shooting of Pikyavit and received differing reports. Wow, different experts have different opinions. There's a shocker. Well, different reports. One found firing officer Sergeant Joshua Allred's conduct not reasonable or necessary, while 2 others determined the opposite, though one of them found parts of the response problematic. See, to me, I mean, that's a much different story to say one found it not reasonable or necessary and 2 others found it reasonable and necessary. That's not what happened. One found it not reasonable or necessary. One found it not particularly problematic, but there were some parts of the response that were problematic, and another one found that it was justified. So because of divergent expert opinions, Gill said the office asked a panel of judges to convene a grand jury to decide if Allred's conduct broke the law. The grand jury declined to indict Allred. Now, I have a problem with that. I have a problem with that in that this is a potential criminal charge. And he's basically asked the judges to convene a grand jury and to decide whether he broke the law or not. You're taking it out of the hands of the people. You as the district attorney are shirking your responsibility essentially to decide whether or not you're going to go ahead with the prosecution and leave it up to a jury. It should be a jury of this officer's peers that decide whether or not his actions were justified. But the Salt Lake County District Attorney decided that he was going to take it out of the hands of the jury and put it in the hands of a grand jury. And the grand jury decided that, they didn't think there was grounds for charges. So Sim Gill, the district attorney, decided that he was not going to bring charges. Let's continue on with the story. So the grand jury declined to indict Allred. We believe that it would be beneficial to include the community in the decision of whether to file criminal charges against him. I completely disagree with that statement. It's not up to the community to decide whether or not to file criminal charges against someone. It's up to the district attorney. The district attorney has to wear the big boy pants or the big girl pants, depending if Dani Ahn gets to win. It's up to the district attorney to decide whether or not. It's up to the community, the jurors that are pooled from the community, to decide whether or not the person is guilty of whatever charges the district attorney brings against them. Now, if the district attorney takes it upon him or herself to decide that there's not enough evidence to pursue charges, or decides themselves that there's no ground, if they just decide they're completely innocent, that's on them. They have to take that responsibility, and they have to take the heat or the benefit that comes from it. But what he's done here is, now he said, we'll let the community decide whether we should charge. That's wrong to me. That doesn't make sense. So what we've got here again is in my opinion, a district attorney that has decided he doesn't want to take responsibility for the decision whether or not to prosecute an officer. To me, he's saying, hey, I'm damned if I do and I'm damned if I don't, so I'm going to let someone else do it, and then they can take the heat for it. They can take the responsibility for it. And again, this was just released last Friday, so we're going to look more and more into it. But before we do that, there is one thing I want to do. I want to introduce you to Dani Ahn, the current candidate for Salt Lake County District Attorney. We will bring this up here, and this will start us off. Where are we at here? Okay.
This is not New York.
Man shot dead and 2 others hurt by bullets.
This is not San Francisco.
Homeless crisis.
And raped.
Smuggling the drugs from...
This is Salt Lake County. You wouldn't know it, though, if you've seen some of the things that I've seen. What was once the crossroads of the West has now become an outpost for crime. Just this last September, Aaron Lowe, a football player from my alma mater, was gunned down by a suspect with a long history of violent crime. His cases included plea deals, delays, and dismissals. If our DA was serious about being tough on crime, it's likely that Aaron Lowe would still be alive. Unfortunately, his case is just the tip of the iceberg. Sexual assault occurs right here in the state of Utah every 6 hours. That means that the vast majority of these victims are not reporting the crime. Here's why. Out of all the sexual assault cases that have been filed, only 35% have ever been reviewed. An even smaller percentage of cases ever lead to charges being filed. And of those charges, most are pled out. So what does that mean for you? That means that 65% of accused offenders aren't in jail and aren't on any lists. Let the facts speak for themselves. There have been too many plea deals for violent repeat offenders, too many unreviewed cases, and too many victims crying alone in the dark for too long. And I'm saying enough is enough. I hear their cries and I keep my promises. And I can promise you that if you vote for me, Danielle Ahn, that within the first 6 months of my time as district attorney, I will stop offering plea deals to repeat violent offenders. I will reforge our relationship with the police, and I will give a voice to victims. Victims deserve a voice, and Salt Lake County deserves justice. Victims deserve a voice, and Salt Lake County deserves justice. Vote for me, Danielle Ahn, because enough is enough.
Okay, there is our campaign ad for Dani Ahn, and here is Dani Ahn. Good morning, Danielle. How are you doing?
Good morning. I'm doing really well. I apologize for the delay. I had to get my war paint on and get myself ready to go today. So I really appreciate your patience.
Yeah, you're busy from 7 o'clock in the morning. That's
Well,
now for those
I
of
mean,
you, yeah,
it makes
go ahead.
it makes it easy when my opponent decides to freaking come out with a decision in the middle of the night, and then it's tweeted, I think only 9 hours ago, this most recent case. And you know, you were talking earlier and delaying really well for me. I apologize to the chat. I apologize to your audience. You were appropriately delaying my entrance. But one of the things that you discussed is the importance of bringing these cases forward. And so I'm going to back it up if that's all right with you.
Go ahead.
So the reason that statutes of limitations exist in the first place, statutes of limitations, or is it statute of limitations? Anyway, generally they exist so that way the cold hand of time can't rob from us the facts and the information and the evidence that we need in order to bring a case forward, whether that be in a civil context or even a criminal context, right? And so this is what pisses me off the most. My opponent waited 4 years to charge this officer, or to decide not to charge this officer, excuse me. And it reminds me of the song that, I still haven't found what I'm looking for. It's like this guy has just been digging and digging and digging for some reason, some excuse to bring about this decision that really should have been brought about, initially. So it's insane to me that he doesn't have the courage, the political willpower to make these determinations and to make these decisions while they're still relevant, without accepting the responsibility of the decisions he's made. That to me is a sign of cowardice, frankly. If it takes you 3 expert witnesses and 1 grand jury to justify the decision that you're making, that to me is disgusting. It's just pure incompetence. And it's not just the decisions with police shootings. So I just sent you this morning this article that came up. Last night, my opponent decided to change his mind after only 3 months concerning a case he had initially declined. There was a fire chief out in Bluffdale, Utah, who had committed paycheck fraud. So he was writing checks that no one had actually earned. And that was going on from 2018 to 2019. The fire chief in question abruptly quit his job in 2020, which signaled something was going on, right, behind the scenes. And my suspicion is that there was political pressure for him to leave because someone else had figured out what was going on. And so he decided to resign. But the DA initially declined to prosecute him in this case. And let me read to you the quote. He says, some of Mr. Roberts, and this is in the declination letter. So for your audience, for those who don't know, a declination letter is a letter that the DA sends out when he is declining charges, declining to bring charges against accused defendant or perpetrator. And so he says here, some of Mr. Roberts, and Roberts is the name of the fire chief. Okay. His name actually is, he kind of sounds like a pirate, which cracks me up. What's his full name? I think it's John. Yeah, I think it's John Roberts or something. Anyway, so he says, Mr. Roberts alleged conduct. Some of Mr. Mr. Roberts' alleged conduct, if proven true, probably violated misdemeanor criminal statutes. Gill wrote, let's see, Gill's office wrote, but they added the statute of limitations on those particular offenses has likely expired. This decision has provided me, and then he goes on, the accused, to say, this decision provided me with some deeply needed closure. Thank you so much, prosecutor, for looking the other way while I committed paycheck fraud and put the money somewhere. I'm really curious to know where the money exactly went.
Well, I believe you said it was time clock fraud is basically what it was, where they were getting paid for hours they didn't work to a total of, I think it was $86,000.
Yeah, it was a not a small amount, certainly. I agree with you. I think it was 86,000. I'll have to fact check myself on that a little bit later, but he says, here's his quote. He says, "We believe," this is the DA speaking, "we believe the facts of this matter, comma, when considered in light of our legal and ethical standards for filing a criminal case, do not satisfy those standards, and a criminal case consisting of felony charges should not commence." That was in his declination letter.
And when was that?
That was in April of this year.
In April, he says, sorry, there's nothing to bring. The misdemeanors are probably time barred out, and there's no grounds for a felony that we can see. That was a few months ago.
That's correct. So that declination letter was pulled up by KUTV and was published in June of this year. Now, I have been getting phone calls. It's really odd since I've decided to run. I've been getting a ton of phone calls from victims whose cases have been sitting around and lingering. Mm-hmm. And it's been, let me see. Sorry, I actually was an adult this time, and I pulled up the chat so I could read the chat with you. So,
yeah. Well, this here, can the prosecutor change their mind and take back the declination letter? Well, that's what you're going to tell us right now, isn't it?
Yes. And so, I had gotten a call from someone with a tip saying, "Hey, there's this corruption that's going on, and Sim Gill is just kind of letting it go, and he knows about it, and he refuses to prosecute." So I had heard this, but I didn't really have enough evidence. But then June comes out. June, it's reported, the declination letter is made public. So a prosecutor, and I love people who change their mind for good reason, okay? If new facts emerge that would make it more likely that you could secure a conviction, that you could meet your burden, right? The burden initially for a prosecutor is very low. The burden is probable cause to bring charges. Mm-hmm. Very low burden. Most prosecutors, however, have to prioritize caseload in cases that they decide to take, right? So although I may have watched someone walking across the street illegally, I'm not going to prosecute them for jaywalking if I have a murder case over here, right? So we do allow some discretion for prosecutors. We don't want a robot sitting in the seat of the prosecutorial position. We want someone who's able to use their discretion wisely and not abuse it. Here's where the abuse comes in, though, where you have no change in facts, no change in facts, no change in any legal standard to bring about charges. And 3 months later, after your opponent during an election year starts to call you out on your bull crap, you decide to change your mind. That's cowardice. That to me is disgusting, because not only is it unfair to the state, it's unfair to the principles of law. It's an injustice. And I really want the news outlets to dig into this, because there's some sort of corruption going on here. I don't think it's any coincidence that the DA is investigating the Bluffdale mayor's husband for threats that he supposedly, allegedly had brought against his colleagues while the mayor was running for office. Now, mind you, Mr. John Roberts, or whatever this UFA chief is, this fire chief's name is, I can't even say UFA because I'm not entirely sure. But whatever this guy's name is, Mr. Roberts, he also was running for mayor. So there's something going on behind the scenes that needs to be dug into and needs to be investigated, because again, I think the timing is just too coincidental that at the same time that the DA decides to charge the mayor's husband for these alleged threats, and dropped the charges against the fire chief. He's now redeciding, right? Going back and changing his decision and now bringing charges against the fire chief without
Well,
any explanation. No change of facts, no change of law.
This may be a bit grandiose for you, but in your opinion, how much do you think you are responsible for him changing course? Because you came on here a couple of months ago, basically the time you were really gearing up your campaign. And as we saw in the introduction video, and as we were talking about in this article, and as you've just mentioned, that's one thing you have been hitting him on repeatedly is the years and years and years that are taking place between the time of incident and him deciding whether or not to prosecute things. How much do you think that your hound dogging him, just latching onto his heels, is pressuring him to do this?
I think it definitely has an impact. Ultimately, right now, he's under the microscope and he knows it. And so the more that I call him out on his bullcrap, the more he's going to have to make some tough decisions and own up to what he's doing. I want answers, though. I want answers not in just this declination, but the 10 declination letters that he distributed from his office. I mean, at least in the prior declination, he gave a reason as to why he was not pursuing charges, right? He said, I don't think that this hits that criminal level of the criminal standard, okay?
But suddenly it does 3 or 4 months later.
Right. But at least he gives a reason. So here's what really pisses me off. KUTV also did another article, a woman by the name of Wendy Halloran. She's an incredible investigative reporter. She went and pulled using the grandma request. Grandma is our state's way of obtaining records. And so public records. So grandma requested from the DA's office all of these declination letters in the past 2 months concerning domestic violence cases. The DA has refused to prosecute domestic violence cases. Only the DA can bring felonies in most of the jurisdictions here in Salt Lake County, if not all. So he's the one who decides whether or not there's a felony enhancement. He has refused to bring felony charges against obvious felony cases. And the reason given in the declination letters is in the interest of justice, the state has declines to pursue further charges. That's it. In the interest of justice, the state declines to bring felony charges in this case. No explanation, no reason, no even factual or legal nexus between his decision making. It is so arbitrary and so unreliable as to be frankly negligent. And I'm seriously concerned about the safety of our county and the safety of what's going on here. And this is a common trend amongst prosecutors, these more liberal prosecutors, that they just sort of make it up. They make up the laws as they go along. You've seen it with Boudin. You've seen it with Gascon in LA. You've seen it in New York. And it's just going on and on and on.
Well, with that, let's. I mean, that's good breaking news. You said, and this is indicative of what we were just talking about with this 4-year decision not to pursue charges against this officer who was involved in this problematic shooting. We'll get back to that in a second, but we should back up a little bit and introduce yourself now that we've got the fire going underneath you there. Before we get started, got one super chat from D. What? How much for you to take a shot? That'll be Friday, and that's $100.
A caffeine shot. We just need caffeine shots.
Yeah, Friday is the booze stream. This is the news stream. And Dave says, pretty sure she's a Targaryen.
Aww.
And we've had requests about dragons and whatnot over there too. So with those two comments out of the way, you lived here in Korea for a while back in 2012 here in Busan, just up within the city. You lived on the other side of the city about 10 years ago. What's happened to your life since then? How does Danielle Ahn come to be a candidate for Salt Lake County District Attorney?
That's such a funny question that you ask, because personally, there was a bunch of stuff that happened, but my career accomplishments, right? What I've done on the surface. After I served my mission and I lived in Korea for a minute, I came back, I met my husband, I got married, best decision of my life. Sorry to everybody in the chat. That's what you all get for simping, I guess. So got married. He encouraged me to go to law school. And I said, okay, that sounds like a good idea. And so I kind of planned out what I needed to do in order to get to the level of going to law school. So I went and I interned at the governor's office with their general counsel. And then I also went and I worked at the State Department on the Korea desk. While serving on the State Department Korea desk, I worked with some North Korean defectors. I did some work for them there. And then I also helped with the THAAD deployment. That is the Thermo High Altitude Aerial Defense System, I want to say, something like that. Basically, what it is it's very similar to like the Iron Dome of Israel. So we had deployed that to South Korea to protect it from North Korea and other threats to the peninsula. And so while I was doing that, I got to know a lot about defense contractor work, right? Because we were working in contract with the prime, which I believe was Lockheed at the time, and Boeing. And then from that work, I went to law school and I thought, oh, I don't want to do litigation. I hate fighting. You know, I didn't wake up. Okay. The thug life chose me. I didn't choose this life. And so I wake up and I decide I'm going to go work at Raytheon. I was their first ever legal intern, first and only. I decided to work at Raytheon for 2 summers. And then my 3rd summer, I decided to make some money. And I went to work at a small litigation firm in Utah, in Salt Lake City. And I loved it. I was a duck to water. It was exactly where I was meant to be. I should have been doing litigation all along. I regret not doing trial ad. I did do IP moot court, which I did really well in. But I didn't involve myself in litigation because I didn't think I was meant for that. I thought that litigators, no offense to all the litigators out there, but I found them to be very petty in personality and not childish, but very aggressive. And I was just not that aggressive. And I thought, oh, you know, I don't think that's a good fit. I was wrong.
What happened? Not aggressive is not how I would describe you these days.
And I think that's what changed is I had a moment of self-actualization where I went, oh, wait a second. Maybe I am aggressive. Maybe I am these people. And maybe the reason I resent them is because that's me, you know? So I changed my stripes and I decided to go into litigation. It was meant to be. And then Sim Gill's office declined to bring charges against 2 of my friends who were violently sexually assaulted in undergrad and law school.
Against their perpetrators.
Yeah. And I was devastated. And so when I heard that Sim Gill was running unopposed this last year, I said, like hell he is. And I went ahead and I filed.
That's a brave move. You may be one of the, if you win, you may be one of, if not the youngest district attorney in the United States.
I think so. I think that may be true, which is a shame because I don't think, you know, a lot of people make this comment that, you know, you're too young, you're naive, which is the funniest comment. I've lived more life in my 32 years, which, you know, you and I have discussed on occasion, than most people have in their 60 years of living. And if age was any measure of competence, I think our Congress would be in a much better position than it is.
New blood, new ideas. Because I am an old SOB, and Sim Gill was just starting up when I was in law school. I know we mentioned this last time you were on the stream. When I was doing my 3rd year practice, he was already semi-established, and during my 2nd year of law school, when I was clerking, he was the opposing counsel on the very, very first case I was ever involved in. And frankly, not a lot's changed in the last 26, 27 years. So I think it's good to get some new blood, some new ideas, some new eyes looking at the situations.
Well, then it's necessary. If it's taking 4 years to bring charges or to make charging decisions, that's your entire term you're in office. So it's like, it's like me as a comparison, it would be me coming in and saying, yes, I'm going to get tough on crime. I'm going to, start charging these criminals. I'm going to hold police accountable. And then waiting until the next election cycle to actually do any of that. I mean, it's absolutely insane. And in one case, sorry, and I don't mean to go on this tangent, but it's just so upsetting to me. I was out in White City, which is a really cute unincorporated town within the city limits of Sandy, Utah. And you talk about sovereign citizens, you talk about people who really love to control their own jurisdiction and their own laws. These people are on it. Anyway, so I'm out there in White City and they're having this end of summer day and end of summer event, right? And I'm just walking around handing out flyers, handing out pamphlets, doing the whole, doing what you do, I'm campaigning. And so I'm shaking hands, kissing babies. And I meet this woman who says, I don't believe in the justice system anymore. And I said, oh, why? And she says, let me tell you my story. Her nephew was violently murdered 9 years ago. And it was during a drug deal gone bad. And his body was desecrated and thrown in a crematorium. But the murderer's son, the alleged murderer's son, was willing to testify against his father as to the events that occurred, as to the confession of his father saying that he had murdered her nephew. And this is the alleged murderer murdering the nephew. And the DA arrested the alleged perpetrators, the alleged murderers, and has just been sitting on that case. They held them, so they charged them on weapons charges, and they're holding them in jail, in prison, on these felony weapons charges. And he keeps promising the family that he'll bring this case to trial. Don't worry, we'll bring it to trial. Don't worry, we'll get justice. Don't worry, this is a slam dunk case. That's what he keeps telling these family members, to the degree that the murdered, the deceased, his father, the victim, his father has started to lose his mind.
And meanwhile, the alleged perpetrator's son has been willing to testify against his own father for the last 9 years and is still not going through.
Yep, still not going to prison. And it's just devastating. So it's more than just, I'm going to wait every election cycle to look like a prosecutor who's doing their job. It's much more than that. It's a family that's been devastated for 9 years, who every single year, whenever, APMP, our parole board, comes around and says, oh, is he eligible for release on the weapons charges? He has to listen to the story about what happened to his son and the facts every single year. And to go and tell the parole board, no, you can't release this guy. He's a dangerous felon. Here's what he allegedly did to my son. Here's what happened. Here's why you can't release him. I mean, I can't imagine a more devastating event to occur in a father's life, in a family's life, but then to have to go and recount those events every single year because you have a DA who won't pursue charges or who won't pursue a trial. There were charges brought. It's been 9 years.
Well, now I don't know if you would go this far, but it seems to me as though you're saying nothing happens during the 4 years, but now that we're gearing up for an election in November, suddenly we're deciding not to prosecute this policeman after 4 years. Suddenly we've changed course and we are going to prosecute the fire chief for his deals. It's like the election cycle is coming up, and now it's time to look busy. It's time to look like you've been doing your job the last 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what it is. There is no other explanation. I'm sorry. It's Occam's razor. If you can go and cut out all the other explanations, and this is the most simple one where you're making the least assumptions, that makes sense. I don't have a better explanation for it. I mean, and I want to know, because he's sitting here saying, well, these declination letters in this most recent case with the fire chief, these declination letters, they're not final. Okay, Sam. So what's the point? You just said that your declination letters are not final. And so should I be telling rape victims whose cases were declined? Should I go back and tell the DV cases whose cases were declined, those victims that, hey, I know that the prosecutor didn't believe you the first time and said that you didn't maybe have a credible witness account, and maybe you wouldn't be good on the stand the first time, but could you please come and testify the second time now that these declinations aren't final in the first place? Hey, you know how you went through the trauma of losing your family member to someone who was intoxicated, who hit your grandson and ran him over and murdered him, and the DA decided not to bring charges against him? Yeah, you know how you dealt with the pain and trauma of living that experience and living the experience of learning that you'll never see justice? Hey, can you come testify again? I mean, it's just, I can't fathom how this man sleeps at night. I'm just being honest. This is from the accounting, not of a candidate who really wants to win this office. That's not my motivation here. Okay. I would much rather, I mean, I'm seeing all of these chats, right? They're saying I'm so pretty and I'm the real Legally Blonde. And I mean, I could go and make money being a litigator in other fields. The reason I'm doing this, though, is because I have heard story after story after story of victims who've come to me and said, please help us. You need to win. You're not winning for you. You're winning for me. I need someone to investigate this. I need someone to find justice for me. And it's just absolutely disgusting that no one else has stood up to this point besides me. To me, that's a failure of the community. That's where our community has failed. But fortunately, in the state of Utah, you do have the ability to hold a DA accountable. The only way to hold them accountable is to vote. You have to vote them out. We don't have some governor like in Florida who can just say, oh, the DA is deciding not to enforce the law. I think they need to go.
Well, how now that you've said, and I believe it was in your campaign video, that you will make decisions within 60 days.
Yeah, I will make a charging decision within 60 days of completing my investigation, which is fair for police officers. I'm not, the FOP has endorsed me, the state. That's the Fraternal Order of Police. They are the largest union, police union. And I was very hesitant to take their endorsement initially because I was like, what if one of these cases arises? I don't want there to be this conflict of interest. And then the more I thought about it, I went, there's always a conflict of interest. These people are our teammates. Why the hell we aren't handing this over to a grand jury in the first place is beyond me. Why we aren't handing this over to a special prosecutor in these cases is beyond me, because I work with the police every single day. You don't want me serving a search warrant. You don't want me going out and enforcing a protective order. I'll likely shoot someone or get shot. I mean, it's a bad decision to send me out there. I'm a liability. So,
well, that raises the question.
Sure.
If you've been endorsed by the Fraternal Order of Police, you work with the police in investigating crimes. Does that mean the police are above the law?
Oh, absolutely not. Oh, absolutely not. If anything, there's such a microscope on every single thing that the cops do that they're almost below the law, just barely, right? Everyone, they almost to some degree have lost their presumption of innocence. And I mean that culturally speaking. That's not how I feel, right? I'm going to treat all defendants equally. I don't care if you're the mayor. I don't care if you're a cop. I don't care if you're a bishop. I don't care if you're a priest. I don't give a crap who you are. I don't care if you're homeless. I don't care what decisions led up to you making that bad decision that day. All I care about is enforcing the law.
Well, you have the two camps, and is the police, F the police. The police are always wrong. Defund the police. Get rid of the police. The police are the biggest organized crime. And then you have the other side. The police can do no wrong. The police, if you don't want to get shot, don't do something wrong. And obviously, if the police beat the hell out of you, you've done something wrong. And there's a very seemingly small group in the middle that look objectively at it and say, okay, there's a complaint. We have to look at it objectively and make the decision there. So are you saying you don't have any qualms going either way?
I think all decisions, at least from a prosecutor's perspective, should always be the objective middle ground, right? You should look at the facts, you should look at the law, and you should be making a determination based on the facts and the law, not your feels about the case. I have no problem bringing a case against a police
A
officer.
police officer, a sheriff.
Don't care. I'm happy to bring, as a matter of fact, I'm happy to bring those cases. If it's a warranted case, if there's enough evidence, I think you should. Now, let me correct myself. Earlier, I said, I don't care what things led you to make that decision that day. I actually do care. It speaks to intent in a lot of cases. But what I mean to say is that's not going to how good you were to the community prior to committing a murder or rape or robbery, how bad you were to the community. How bad you were to the community matters to the degree that it may show a pattern, right? Or a habit. And I think that's important. But other than that, I just think that you need to take each case on a case-by-case basis, and you need to look and examine the facts, examine the law, and if they're lining up, you bring a case. Because if you're bringing charges and actually moving it to trial, there's a level of accountability and transparency with the public that reinstills that sense of trust in the justice system. And if we don't have that trust in the justice system, we're going to have people taking matters into their own hands. And that is not a place where we want to be as a country. We're not Gotham.
Well, let's look at a couple of the cases. As I was saying when we were bringing you in, right now, the police use of force is a hot topic. It's been a hot topic since George Floyd. Since even before that, but it escalates, and then it's like a wave. It's a good ocean. It's got its ups and its downs. And right now, after this beating, whether it was a justified beating or an unjustified beating, what happened in Arkansas last week was a beating. That was a police beating, whether it was justified or not. And I wanted to kind of look at this from a Utah perspective, because that's where you're from, and that's why we were talking about the shooting, the SWAT shooting from 4 years ago. That again, I think it's very, very cowardly of District Attorney Gill to turn it over to a grand jury. It seems to me that's saying, I don't want to take responsibility for the actions. And I didn't like this statement where let me bring this up again and get your reactions. You may think I'm a complete nutcase in my opinion, but I did not like this line here. We believed it would be beneficial to include the community in the decision of whether or not to file charges against him. To me, I think that is the district attorney's responsibility to decide whether or not to bring charges against him. The community who sits on the jury will decide whether or not he's guilty or innocent, or guilty or not guilty. I think this sounds to me like a huge cop-out on the district attorney's part.
Well, it's more than a cop-out. I mean, it really is a dereliction of duty. You said it best, right? This is the role of the DA. Here's the funny thing, like the DA doesn't have that much work in terms of obligations or oaths, right? So we are the chief prosecutor, right, for the county. We help. We're an administrative role to a very large degree, right? We set policies, we hire, we fire, we organize the office. But one of the few things that the DA does, because we don't try cases, the DA themselves does not try the case. But one of the few obligations of the DA is to make charging decisions, especially in these high-profile cases. And it's insane to me, this idea, and this isn't the first time with Sim Gill, okay? He's saying, well, I wanted the community to be involved in this. To me, it's insane because he went through, like I said, 3 expert witnesses before it went to a grand jury. I have no problem sending it to a grand jury. As a matter of fact, I think in a lot of cases, a grand jury is very appropriate. My issue is you didn't get your answer you were looking for with your first expert witness. The first expert witness came out and said, this is a justified act, lawful use of force.
Yeah. Yeah, we had the 3 people, 3 different opinions. Go figure. One said absolutely no. One said absolutely yes, and the other one says yes and no.
Yes and no. And the yes
that covers
and no
all bases.
one, if I were DA, I would have accepted the yes and no answer, right? That's kind of where I land on this case, where there was a lot of misconduct. There may have been breaches of policy. There may have been, areas of improvement. but ultimately probably legally justified.
Okay,
And
that's interesting. Well, let's argue this because I take the opposite view. So
okay,
this is a good setup. Let's go through this, and then I'll make my arguments, and then you play the advocate for your point of view. We're probably justified. And getting back to this article, the next line I think is also absolute crap, absolute garbage. Salt Lake City Police said Friday, this is Friday, 4 years after, that the department hasn't finished its internal review of the shooting. The police chief has not finished his internal review of a shooting that took place 4 years ago, and that Allred remains employed on regular duty. In a written statement, the department said that the grand jury's decision shows that our community deemed the officer's actions justified under the law, which I know is garbage because this decision not to prosecute, as well as the attitude at the time this happened, was extremely critical. And the fact that a few people on a grand jury, now the grand jury is judges, correct, in Utah?
so the judges are the ones who impanel a grand jury.
Okay.
I believe, yeah.
So a few people decided what the 3 million people in Utah felt. So they said every day our officers come to work and help ensure community safety and to protect themselves and fellow officers. We are proud of our officers, the department said. And again, I believe this is true for the vast majority of policemen. They do a good job. They work hard. They put their lives on the line and they help out. But now this is what happened. And then we'll look at the video of what happened. And I think the video of what happened to me speaks a lot louder. On April 18th, 2018. So it's not even 4 years. It's like 4.5 years.
Can I press pause just for a second?
Absolutely.
I want to say that my determination was when I say that my senses, my feeling is I tend to agree with the third position, is because I don't know all of the facts of the case, right? I'm not sitting there in his shoes. I haven't, there's a lot going on. And when they say that the police investigation hasn't concluded, that could be anything, right? It could be that they have all the evidence. They've gone and investigated all these things, but they just haven't written up their final report because they're trying to be careful about liability issues to a certain extent, right? You can word something one way that sounds completely innocent, word it the wrong way, and suddenly you're paying out $12 million. Well,
let me word the question this way then.
Sure.
Knowing that you take, and I completely agree that there is the yes and no part. That expert who said there are things were done well, things were done problematically. I would say because that, I would say turn it over to the jury and let a jury decide if any laws were broken. Would you say turn it over to the jury, or as just I know I'm putting you on the spot, and you can tell me I'm putting you on the spot, but would you have ultimately, just knowing what you know, and I know you don't have access to all the details, your gut feeling, would it be something you would turn over to a jury, or be more inclined to turn over to a jury, or more inclined to give the benefit of the doubt?
Well, let's go through the facts. We'll walk through the facts,
all right,
and then I'll reserve my judgment. But I'm just saying from a process standpoint, from someone who's looking at taxpayer dollars, who's looking at, what it was that the DA did to come to this conclusion. I think it's a little ridiculous, right? If you have a grand jury, 2 expert witnesses who say this was justified. Okay. So that's 3 votes against 1. I mean, my issue there is you've completely eliminated the justice process. Due process is gone.
Well, and that was,
so that's where you and I agree. I would much rather, if you feel that this is truly unjustified, which is indicative of what his feelings are, right? I can't read minds, but if you're going and seeking 3 expert witness opinions and a grand jury, that tells me you didn't get the answers you really wanted the first few times. Well, then just bring it forward. If you feel it was unjustified, bring the case forward, let it go to the jury, prove your case. And if you can't do that, freaking retire, man.
Okay, that's a good enough answer for me. And then we'll see if you have any gut feelings once we look into this. Again, I have nothing. I have no qualms giving my opinion, but lawyerly answers are appropriate. You feel free to hedge at the end, but
All right. Well,
Um,
now we'll play.
yeah.
Now we'll play.
Yeah.
Now this is not an official opinion.
Yeah.
We're just playing. Okay.
April 18th, 2018. Pikyavit's girlfriend called 911 around 12:15 p.m. to report that he had punched her over and over in the face and that he was suicidal. The woman told a dispatcher that he had a knife, later determined to be a broken pair of scissors, and held it to his neck, according to Gill's finding letter. When police arrived, Pikyavit was outside the woman's home near 1100 East Princeton Avenue, but went inside after an officer tried to talk to him. As additional officers arrived, they tried to coax Pikyavit outside. When he didn't exit the house, police lined up around its perimeter and waited. Officers requested someone bring a less lethal impact weapon to the scene and tried to talk to Pikyavit through a loudspeaker. Pikyavit would sometimes appear in the home's front doorway or the back mudroom, and it seemed that he was holding 2 knives, police said. At times, officers were able to speak with Pikyavit, but they were unable to maintain contact as he continued to retreat inside. In one confrontation, Pikyavit told officers that he was going out with a bang, Gill's letter states. In another, Pikyavit said he wanted to die. So it's the old death by cop scenario here.
Can I ask a quick question? Where is the girlfriend?
Apparently, she's still in the house.
Okay.
Apparently. That's how I remember it. Maybe something will contradict me here, but I remember she's in the house. The SWAT team, including Allred and 3 others, arrived and took control of the scene at 1:18 p.m. So it's been going on an hour, and the SWAT shows up. About an hour after Pikyavit's girlfriend called 911. At 1:45 p.m., an additional SWAT officers arrived. Police began to smell gas. Pikyavit appeared at the back of the house and said he was trying to light a match to burn down the house, adding that he wouldn't go back to prison and that he was going to die today, police said. Officers turned off the home's gas and power. Solved that problem. The police shooting. Here's where we get into the details. About 5 minutes later, Pikyavit opened the front door and walked onto the porch holding a serrated knife in one hand and the half scissor blade in the other. That's when 4 original SWAT officers, including Allred, moved into position more than 22 feet from the porch's bottom steps, Gill wrote. Allred had an AR-15 rifle and positioned himself behind an officer holding a ballistic. Allred is the one who fired the shot. He's the one that's he's the one in question here. And positioned himself behind an officer holding a ballistic shield. Officer Bob Norgard was behind Allred, armed with a 40mm less lethal gun. I believe it was a beanbag, I believe it may have been.
Okay, I was going to say less lethal gun. I've never heard of a gun described as being less lethal, except by some FUDs maybe, or some glowies. So
another officer stood behind Norgard and had an AR-15 at the ready. So we've got two AR-15s and 1 less lethal gun. Officers yelled for Pikyavit to come out with his hands up, to stay on the porch, to drop the knife, to stop, and to sit down. Pikyavit responded by moving his hand back and forth, up and down, while holding the knife. He told officers to shoot me, according to body camera footage. Moving down the porch steps, Pikyavit soon threw the serrated knife on the ground, transferring the scissor blade to his right hand. Officers continued telling him to sit down and drop the knife. Milliseconds, literally milliseconds, we'll get into that a little bit later, milliseconds after Pikyavit stepped off the bottom porch onto a concrete walkway, Norgard fired the less lethal round. Milliseconds after that, Allred fired. It was 1:51 p.m. Pikyavit collapsed and the police moved in. He died at the scene. Allred later told investigators that Pikyavit made eye contact with him while he was on the porch and said, "I'll kill you." A report released Friday states. Allred said he perceived Pikyavit stepping off the porch as the man's last stand. And again, he's like 22 feet away, he said. And Pikyavit would make his charge towards us and try to hurt one of us. And again, for this year, this is a police training thing that some people agree with it. Some people are highly critical of it. They say that if a perpetrator is within 21 feet of you, they can be upon you and attacking you before you have time to draw and shoot your weapon. So I think that's why they're making the big deal of the 22 feet. And he's saying, okay, now he's within 22 feet of us. He could get to us and hurt one of us before we could take him out. So we took him out. I think that's the argument that he's making. His man's last stand, make his charge towards us. Now, differing expert opinions. While Gill doesn't always bring in outside experts to consult on police shootings, and feel free to jump in anytime you want here, he wrote in his findings letter that the prosecutors wanted to better understand the immediacy of the threat presented by Mr. Pikyavit, his dynamic nature, and the circumstances surrounding the use of deadly force. The prosecutor spoke first with Edward Daigle, a Connecticut-based law enforcement consultant and trainer. His review found issues with Allred's use of force and tactical response. Sergeant Allred was faced with a split-second decision in this rapidly evolving, tense, and uncertain event. His decision, however, to utilize deadly force rather than follow the established plan to first utilize a lethal alternative was not reasonable or necessary. That's where I hang my hat in this whole thing, but we'll get into that. Daigle determined, and a well-trained officer would recognize the need to first utilize the identified less lethal means prior to resorting to deadly force. While Daigle said it was clear that Pikyavit had the ability to harm officers, he was unconvinced that he had the opportunity or intent to. What is clear is that at the time, there were more than 20 officers stationed around the perimeter of the residence armed with various less lethal weapons, shields, and lethal weapons. Daigle wrote.
Okay, I'm going to take issue with the opportunity or intent.
Okay.
And intent is clearly established. He did want to harm officers. That was established. I mean, when you fill your house up with gas, you're essentially creating a bomb. He knows that. Most people know that. And if you don't know that, that's exactly what happened to what was the name of the cold? It's since gone cold. There was a case here in Utah of a man who had allegedly murdered his wife, but the DA at the time did not charge. There was no evidence, essentially, to charge the husband. Anyway, he later decided to take the two kids from during a supervised visit with his two children. He took the kids in the house and had filled up the house with gas waiting for the cops, and then lit it on fire, and it exploded with the two kids and him inside. So anyone who lived here in Utah would have heard that story. Gas explosions are not uncommon, or they're not that rare, I should say. So we know that's occurring. So it's likely that someone in his circumstances would know that that would cause harm to others. And the fact that he stepped off the porch, dropped the serrated knife, but then proceeded towards the police with the other knife or the broken scissors indicates he wasn't interested necessarily in just harming himself. He had, if it was a suicide attempt, he had, this may sound crass, but he had hours to decide to commit suicide. And to charge towards police with a knife, and then I'm curious, was there body cam on the shooting officer?
Someone, either him or someone next to him had it. And we'll watch that here in just a minute.
Okay, because I'm curious if the mic picked up this "I'll kill you" comment, because that speaks directly to intent as well.
The mic picked up a lot of things that lead me to my conclusions, but we'll see how it goes down the line here. So Gill's office then retained Ogden Police Chief Randy Watts. Ogden's about 30 minutes north of Salt Lake City. And Missouri-based use of force expert Steve James, whatevs. Both said Allred's use of force was reasonable and necessary. They said Pikyavit posed a clear threat because he was armed with an edged weapon, was around 21 feet from the officers, and wasn't listening to police commands.
Hold on. So what was the expertise of the first witness?
He was a Connecticut-based law enforcement consultant and trainer.
So one is a consultant and trainer in Connecticut, and these other two are...
One is from Ogden Police Chief, and a Missouri-based use of force expert.
So one is a use of force expert, the other is a chief.
Yes. And
those two agree that this was justified. The trainer and consultant disagrees. Okay. Yeah.
So police are often, here we go. Yeah. The police are often taught the 21-foot rule, which originated in Salt Lake City, and says that someone I didn't know it originated in Salt Lake City.
I didn't
said
either.
someone 21 feet away with an edged weapon can run at an officer and stab them before the officer has time to draw their gun and fire. This training technique is controversial. And someone asked why, who's critical of it. That's one of the things. It assumes they're already running, and it assumes that if they do start running, someone's not already pointing a weapon at their head? Do they actually
Right.
have to draw
That's
and
the
fire?
assumption. I think
Yeah.
you could probably start a run and be able to attack an officer before they're able to draw and aim and fire. And I mean like not having a running start. So I think within 21 feet, you could probably
Yeah.
attack an officer and they wouldn't be able to get their gun ready. You have a super chat, by the way.
Yep, we got a couple of them to get here through. Flux,
Thanks,
Flux, thank you so much for the super chat there. I like her. She's got a good head on her shoulders. You've got good friends, LV. Thank you so much for that. Whiskey Actual, who's critical of the 21-foot rule. We've went over that. And Brandon Lesko, thank you so much. iJames basically founded SWAT, wrote all the police rules, taser rules. He's the final opinion. What was it? Was in the that was the guy in the Potter trial?
Wow.
Oh, he was like the expert in the Potter trial that they basically took like 6.5 hours going through his resume. And he basically did everything except well, I guess he did save children in Africa too. He was the superstar there. Yeah, because it was Daryl Gates founded SWAT, and he was one of the big. Oh, that's him. Okay, are we sure, Brandon Lesko?
Yeah, Stephen iJames. It's Stephen iJames, right?
Yeah.
I'm pulling up the case. Jurors and ex-cop Kim Potters.
Oh yeah. Did you
Now
watch the
that
Kim Potter
case?
trial?
I think. Oh yeah, that case was a joke.
Oh, so we saw him. We saw the iJames, the expert, literally saying he works with countries and he develops everything. He saves children in Africa in his spare time. And yeah, okay, so all right, that's interesting. And it's interesting because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to sort of compare and contrast this incident with the Potter incident. So it's interesting he was involved in both. Okay.
Well, and to your listeners, usually when you're bringing in an expert witness at trial, not usually, it's a rule. You have to provide the opposing side with a list of all their prior publications, cases they testified in. And the reason that it's important to either side is you can say, well, this guy always says, that these cases are justified. And so that's what I'm looking for right now because I don't recall his opinion. I want to say that it was consistent with training is what he said in the Kim Potter case.
Yeah.
But I could be mixing them up.
Okay. Well, that kind of actually put me a little more in his camp because that guy was basically Superman.
So he's very well accomplished. Like I do recall his testimony. So he says, it says in this Insider article, Stephen iJames, who testified for Potter's defense on Thursday, described himself to the jury as a law enforcement professional with more than 40 years of experience. iJames testified that after reviewing body camera footage of the traffic stop, he believed Wright was not in control of the vehicle when Potter was shouting taser, but Potter's perceived attempt, and I'm using air quotes because it's in quotes, but Potter's, quote, perceived attempt, end quote, to tase Wright was, quote, consistent with police taser training. So he found that her training was consistent, and given the facts of the case, it made sense. And the question, so here was the line of questioning. If the vehicle had been put in drive, no question. iJames is what he responded to the defense attorney's exact. So basically he's saying if the car was in drive, there is no question she was able to shoot. So even had she intentionally grabbed a gun and shot him, that would have been justified at that point because the defendant was no longer in control of the vehicle. I agree with his opinion in that case. And so that lends credibility, in my own personal opinion, to his opinion in this case.
Which was, accordingly, a prudent and properly trained officer facing these or similar circumstances would have reasonably perceived this action to be an attempt to cause death or serious physical injury. He also noted
for others. I think that's important because even if it wasn't a direct threat to the responding officer, the officer who shot, it could have been a threat to someone else. Just saying.
And they also noted that while officers that day generally acted in accordance with contemporary policies and training, the SWAT team's tactical resolution strategy wasn't in accordance and increased the probability of a negative outcome at the crisis site. He said the officers should have created more space between themselves and Pikyavit and stood behind police vehicles or other barriers so he wouldn't have easy access to them if he charged with the blade. He also argued Norgard should have been instructed to fire at Pikyavit when he exited the house and didn't drop the blades. Instead,
see, and I like that decision. I think that's a fair opinion. I think that's a really fair critique and very credible. If I were Sim Gill, and let's say I were going to take this to trial, I would be worried about his opinion because that seems like a very credible expert witness opinion.
So instead, team members were positioned in the open approximately 21 feet from the porch, James wrote. So let's talk about why it took 4 years to investigate. Prosecutors announced the conclusion of their investigation into Allred more than 4 years after the shooting took place. After Pikyavit was killed, his father, Neil, filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against Salt Lake Police. That litigation remained on hold as both sides waited on Gill's determination. So even the federal civil rights lawsuit is waiting for him. Gill attributed the delay to several factors, including Allred initially declining to speak with prosecutors about his decision to shoot. Yeah. If you're going to prosecute me, I'm not talking to you either. Then sending them a written statement 9 months later, experts reviewing and opining on the case, the COVID-19 pandemic, and convening a grand jury. It's unclear how often, if ever, Gill's office has petitioned for a grand jury to review a police shooting. He declined to specify on Friday, which tells me it's not very many. His office evidently asked for one in the controversial police shooting of Danielle Willard in 2012, 10 years ago. The Utah Supreme Court upheld a 5-judge panel's decision not to convene a grand jury in that case. So he asked for one and didn't get one, it sounds like.
Yeah, because that was a clearly justified shooting. It's actually funny. My criminal law professor was the defense attorney in that case. And
who was that?
Judge Cassell.
Because Danny and I, we both went to University of Law School. Professor Cassell had him for a class too. Great guy.
I believe he was the defense attorney, but he laid out the case, and he actually, when we were talking about use of force, that was the case that he used, and he outlined it all. And it's funny because in law school, I thought to myself, I still don't like the outcome. I think they got it wrong. But now, as a little more seasoned attorney looking at the facts of the case, I go, okay, yeah, no, actually, that probably was justified. In that case, it was a sting operation gone bad. So they were trying to catch this drug deal going on. Daniela had ran away because she thought that this wasn't the cops arresting the other drug dealers. She thought this was a different gang coming.
Was this the one that was like in Rose Park or something like that? Like a Rose Park Hotel or something like that?
I'm not entirely sure. I thought it was in an apartment, but anyway, could have been. Or at a home. And so what happens is she goes to run away. She gets in the car. She backs up the car, and there are police with their guns drawn. And supposedly the officer who knocked on her window and said, surrender, basically, come out with your hands up. He did not identify himself as a police officer. So from my perspective, it's reasonable for her to have assumed that this was a gang and not the cops. I think where it was unreasonable is they weren't in badged gear, right? So there was no identifying clothes on them. So she backed up and aimed her vehicle towards the officers who were already positioned here. So her vehicle's here, the officers were here, just to the side of the car, and she backed up to try and hit them. And so the officers in the front shot through the windshield and killed her. So that was,
and he charged her, and they dismissed it. The Supreme Court dismissed it eventually.
He charged the officers.
The officer,
and the Supreme Court dismissed. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's look at the video. This is the video of the shooting, and there's some things that apparently none of the experts noticed, or if they did, it wasn't mentioned in the article, that bothered me highly, which kind of is what led me to my opinion that at least it should have been turned over to a jury and let them see more evidence rather than just thrown out into the wind. Let's bring up ye olde video here. Well, great. Instead of bringing it up, I just closed it. That's how I roll. All right, there we go. This is the video, and we'll kind of start and stop. And if you want to stop anytime, just let me know and we'll stop it. See if we can make this large without taking up the whole screen. Yep.
911, what is your emergency?
Yeah, my boyfriend just broke all the glass in my house and he punched me a bunch in the face and now he's threatening to kill himself.
What's the address? Just stay on the line with me, okay? And now tell me exactly what happened.
I don't know. I just told him to leave and he said, I'm going to leave. And he went downstairs and I heard a bunch of glass break.
Okay.
And then he came upstairs and I said, what is wrong with you? And he said, do you want to see somebody die? And I said, no.
Okay.
Why are you threatening to kill yourself?
Okay.
And I said, just leave. And I kicked him. And so he just punched me over and over and over.
Okay.
And I said, stop, it hurts. And then
Okay.
he just took the knife and took it to his neck. And I just ran out of the house and called 911.
Okay, so she was out of the house.
Okay.
Okay, when did this happen? How many minutes ago?
I don't, 2, 3, 5.
Okay, no problem. Okay, and you said that he had a knife? What type of knife was it?
It's a half of a pair of scissors.
Okay.
And here we start the footage. Again, I'm not sure whose body cam this is, but it's the guys in question, all reds, or one of the two people standing right next to him. Let's watch this for the next minute and a half.
DeLorean, Salt Lake City Police Department. With your hands up, buddy.
On your right.
Don't come off that porch.
Drop the knife.
Don't come off that porch.
Okay, so we can hear him saying, shoot me. And they're telling him not to come off the porch.
Bill, if he goes back in, I'm going to hit him.
He's got a knife left hand. Go back, come out, drop the knife, and we can end this peacefully. We can end this peacefully.
Now, see, I like this. This is the de-escalation. They're telling him to put it down. They can end it peacefully. They're not just blasting him. I think everything is cool up to this point.
But there was a negotiator prior to this,
Yes.
or was it just the loudspeaker saying, please come out of the house?
That's him. This is what I guess it's the negotiator or whoever the person in charge of talking is the one that's giving him these instructions.
Okay, because I want to be fair in context, right? So this is after hours. This is after the gas has already been shut off. The electricity's been shut off. Okay.
Yeah.
Come on, man, it's okay. We can end this peacefully. Come on, man. Put the knife down. Put the knife down. 2 knives. Hey, DeLorean. DeLorean, I'm glad you came out. Remember I was talking to you earlier? Don't come up anymore. Do me a favor. Get down.
Let Hartley talk. Let Hartley talk.
Right there.
See, the guy that's yelling is all red, I believe. You've got the guy saying, hey, I'm glad you came out. We're glad we're talking. He's like, stop right now, right now. And the other officer is telling him, let the guy talk. That's where I kind of start to be a little concerned about this. Is all red. The guy that's shooting, he's yelling at the guy rather than letting the negotiator negotiate. And even the other officers are telling him, just shut up and let the guy talk. That's kind of where I'm a little bit iffy on this. And it continues. You can hear him continually talking and yelling at the guy while the other guy is trying to defuse it.
Right there. Sit down, DeLorean.
Let Hartley talk, Josh. Let Hartley talk.
DeLorean, do me a favor. Sit down. Hey, DeLorean. DeLorean, do me a huge favor and sit down. Look at me
Wait
for
till
a
he
second.
takes. Let Hartley talk.
DeLorean.
That's the third time he said, let him talk.
Will you sit down for me? I was speaking to you earlier. DeLorean, it's not a time to play games right now, okay? Do me a favor and sit down. DeLorean. Hey, DeLorean, look at me for a second, okay? I want you to sit down so we can talk. Remember I said we're going to figure out what we're doing?
I got it.
So we get ready to go? DeLorean, how long have you been here? Have you been here about 3 months?
Josh, that's your LOE.
Put it down.
Josh, that is your
Put
LOE.
it down right now.
Josh, let Hartley talk.
Put it down.
Let Hartley talk.
Put it down.
Josh, stop.
DeLorean, look at me and have a seat. Have a seat.
Okay.
And that's where I have my problem. The two problems I have is this guy's trying to amp up the situation.
Right.
He's yelling at him, giving these commands that directly contradict what the guy that's de-escalating is saying. He's told 6 or 7 times, let him talk, don't interrupt, don't yell at him, let him talk. And I think my gut feeling is the officer is really amped up at this point. And when the other guy fires the less lethal round, whether it was a beanbag or a rubber bullet or whatever it was, they said it was 200 to 600 milliseconds later, he fired a live round into the guy. So,
this brings up an interesting point. And this is where I would like to look at the police training and see what the standard is. I think it would be wise to put in place a standard. I don't know how long Allred was on the scene, but I do think that it would be wise to have police officers circulated out who've been dealing with an escalating situation or de-escalating situation over the course of a period of time.
Oh, that's an interesting suggestion. Sort of get the adrenaline out and get fresh in.
Right.
I like that. Okay.
Because I mean, I recall being young and being very emotional and being very aggressive. And the reason I say being young is because that's when I'm not full of testosterone, right? I'm not a man. And all the men, you can all get upset, but I'm just making an observation. Men, when they get upset, when they get into their fight or flight, when that police training kicks in and their adrenaline is pumping for hours, it can escalate. It doesn't de-escalate, right? It's not like, oh, okay, I need a break. It's that son of a bitch. I told him not to do this. I've instructed them yes or no multiple times, right? And it starts to escalate. And this has just been my experience with aggressive men or with men in general. And I
would definitely agree that when it comes to fight or flight, men tend to fight more than flight.
Right. And I think the failure here is a little bit, if there is a failure, like I said, on procedure, where the leadership should have stepped in and said, all right, man, go take a seat. Clearly you need to calm down. You need to calm down, chill out. We understand your frustration. But I could also see where leadership was probably thinking, all right, we've been talking to this guy and trying to talk him down for several hours. And one of two things can happen. It can either climax with him trying to hurt us or himself, or it can de-escalate. And so I could see from a leadership perspective where you would want to have two different or opposing officers, not to funnel it down to good cop, bad cop, but to sort of have that carrot and stick where there's this carrot where you're giving them opportunities and chances and saying, hey, calm down, sit down, please sit down for your life. We want you to be okay. And then having another officer who's saying, sit the frick down. Otherwise there's going to be consequences because you're threatening me or yourself or someone else. And that's not okay either. So it's a tough call.
Here's where I come down.
Sure.
My gut feeling is that is a very, very questionable justification. But I think it should have been put to a jury to make the decision whether or not it was justified. I don't think it should have been taken out of the hands of a jury and a decision just made that it was justified based on a group of 2 or 3 people thinking about it without a full trial and a full presentation of evidence. That's where I have my problem.
I mean, to an extent, I agree with you, right? As someone who, like I said, that probable cause standard's not very high.
Yeah.
Well,
what's the saying that a grand jury can indict a ham sandwich?
Right.
If they want to.
Right. My concern, though, is where even as a prosecuting attorney, I'm sitting here going, I don't know if I've met that threshold. And I've gotten, 2 different opinions that say you haven't, even though there may have been misconduct. It's not clear that this was illegal or unlawful. I don't feel like I've met my threshold at that point. Now, there's differing opinions, right? Clearly,
Sure.
if you were DA, you would say, I'm going to charge this. I'm bringing it to a jury. I'll let them decide. From my perspective, though, I'm looking at this and I'm going, as a prosecutor, do I have the evidence? Have I met my burden for that minimum threshold? And I think too, where there's the evidence that someone shot a less lethal round and a more lethal round is a double-edged sword, right? It shows that there was even differing opinions on the scene as to the level of threat. I think we would benefit by more clarity in our use of force standard under the law. I think it would be better to be more clear in terms of subjective versus objective threat analysis.
That's exactly where I wanted to go next, because I'm sure it wasn't just a result of this, but there were recent, at least post Floyd, is my understanding, revisions to the use of force policies for the Salt Lake. And that's the one thing I will give the Salt Lake Police Department major credit for. They're very, very, very transparent with things, at least now.
Well, at least right now on this case in particular. With everything else in these DV cases, I'm really curious why the police didn't stand up and say, hey, Sim, why are you declining these DV cases? We showed up. We responded. We were the SWAT team that was called out on this case. We have multiple witnesses who can talk about what occurred in this case. And you're declining to bring charges? Are you kidding me? Yeah,
I mean, this is just specifically use of force cases that I'm talking about. Whether they're transparent on other things, they tend not to be, I think, and prosecutors even less so.
Again, this goes back to, how did this take 4 years to make this decision? The only reasonable explanation for it is politics.
Just grow a pair and make a decision.
Yes, just make a decision.
That's your job.
I literally watched this, with what information I had. I gave you my initial opinion, sort of where I was leaning, barring, changes in evidence, obviously. I could understand wanting the first expert opinion in this case, just to verify my own conclusion, to say, yep, I'm not alone in this, right? As here's an expert, and even the expert saying this would be justified. Okay. I would have liked to have seen that, at least at a minimum. Why that took 4 years instead of 2, that makes no sense to me.
Hallie Picciano says, as a DVSA survivor, I appreciate you.
Oh, thank you. And I'm sorry that happened to you. And I'm glad you're still here.
That's hard to segue out of that comment.
Oh, sorry. And going back to the less lethal shot, the less lethal shot was the first shot, right?
Yes. And then two or 600. See, I mean, my gut feeling is, it's just with any other police shooting, you hear one shot go off, you just start shooting. Someone else has decided it was a threat. And whether he had processed that this was the non-lethal guy or not, probably wasn't processing that.
Exactly. And if you're listening to these shots, I don't know if you know that the first guy who shot was shooting a non-lethal round. In your mind, you're thinking, oh, this is all right, it's go time again. And that's what brings me to this idea of, in certain circumstances like this one, where it's clear that this guy has some kind of mental issue going on. I mean, that should have been made clear within the first hour or two. Clearly he's suicidal. Clearly he's in some form of mania to be destroying windows and punching his girlfriend and sort of snapping like this. Something's up. And maybe a change in policy to switch out officers should be, moving forward, a recommendation to consider.
Well, that leads straight into the second case that just happened a few days ago, that they released the body cam footage last Friday, I believe. While we segue into that, now is a good time for the midstream. Hey, everybody, hit that like and subscribe button. Get this quick grift out of the way. We've got 228 people here now, 210 likes. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Go visit Dani Ahn's page. Her campaign page has one of the greatest web addresses ever, DA4 number 4 DA. So DA DA number 4 DA. So DA4DA.com. That is that's her web address. And in the links down here, I've got the Instagram and I've got your page address up. So go visit her, go see what it's about, look into it. And for those of you that I know we've got people in Brigham that are here in the stream right now. I know we've got some people. If you're in Salt Lake City, consider giving her your vote this November for district attorney if you're in Salt Lake County. We got Brandon. Let's go really quick here before I forget. I think this warranted a background or a taser, as Branko would say, at the exact moment when he was presenting a perceived deadly threat. Problem is, jury will lock cop up regardless. However, Utah tends to be the police can do no wrong state.
There is an element of that here, unless. I don't know this. I'll give credit where due. This is where you and I may disagree on whether or not we've met the threshold. I will say this is not an easy case. This is not as clear cut as it could have been. And I agree that maybe again. Here's my thing. If they were going to go with less lethal rounds, okay? If they were going to go with non-lethal alternatives, why weren't all of the guns switched to non-lethal? And this is where I really agree with that third opinion, where it's like, wait a second, where was the leadership here? What was the strategy? If you knew that something was going to be going on here, why weren't you behind the cars? If you knew there was a perceived threat here, why were changes not made in that strategy over the course of time, right? Sort of, I feel like there's this freeze that may go on in leadership, and I don't know how true this is, and I'm sure I'm going to piss off a bunch of cops. But I'm curious what occurs in the leadership breakdown in cases like Uvalde and others, where it seems to be there's this moment of freeze and then just continue on the course of action without reevaluating and without changing that course of action. When the situation changes.
Well, regardless, I agree that it shouldn't have taken 4 years to do this.
Right.
And I'm just not comfortable with him saying we should leave it up to the community whether or not to charge the police. Should
we leave it up to the community whether or not to charge a rape or murder or any other case?
If you're going to do it for one, do it for all.
Exactly. Or be consistent. Right. So that's my thing. If you're going to have a grand jury, or a jury take a look at the case and make a charging decision for you on a police shooting, it should be all police shootings.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it goes back to that idea of being conflicted out because I work with these people, right? I have to work with these people and to hold them accountable fairly, to be fair in holding them accountable. Maybe a grand jury makes sense, but in that case, it's got to be consistent.
So training, Kitty Cat asked, would you recommend Leos to have training at the academy to deal with the rise in mental health cases?
So LEOs already have training in post-certification. So they already get several hours of mental health training. It would be better to have more, I think, and not just training for officers on how to deal with mental health crises in the field, dealing with threats and perceived threats, but also dealing with each other and learning to recognize signs of suicidal ideation, depression, anxiety in their colleagues and being able to help them as well. Honestly, I think that mental health training is something we could all use a little bit of in the US. A lot more mental health education is so desperately needed here. And so it's not just LEOs, it's everyone. We need to start to recognize, understand mania versus having a mental illness and dealing with the symptoms of mental illness up to and including mania.
Well, now, Brandon, I don't know if I said thank you for that super chat, but thank you for the super chat if I didn't. We have another one here from Justin Wright. Some police protocols are to have lethal backing up less lethal use. Which, that makes sense.
That makes sense. Right. And that goes back to that idea of having someone who's de-escalating while also having someone who's saying, stop, 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 right? Having that consequence guy is what I'm going to call them, the consequence guy.
And I was surprised, and this is sort of what started off this whole thing, was this this most recent incident, that I was surprised at and I shouldn't have been, at the Associated Press article that came out, which to me seemed really, really biased, and especially after watching the videos. So what I want to do is I want to play the 911 call, and then look at what I consider to be highly biased against the police news stories. This is one where I'm fully, squarely, 100% in the police proper use of force, if you can even call it that, in this particular arrest, which they're being highly criticized for. Let's bring this up real quick here. Oh, and before we actually play this, we got another one here from Brendan. Let's go. Thank you again for the other super chat. Two things. One, James is saying, yeah, they were technically justified, but only because their strategy was improper. Right. That's what it seemed to be. Is like, okay, under the circumstances, the way they were situated, yes, but they shouldn't have been situated that way. That's what I got out of it. And two, another one. You could have done this all in one. Gee, thanks. I think you get to probable cause and have to charge the thing and trust the system. The 4 years is a joke. Yeah, regardless, the 4 years is a joke.
That's it. And that's the point, right? As I said earlier, this is not an easy decision to make. No one's claiming that it is. But you don't wait 4 years to decide, because you lose evidence, you lose testimony. Let's say he had determined that it was unjustified. How do you now bring it to trial?
Mm-hmm.
Where are all of your witnesses? Are your witnesses going to be credible? Are they going to remember everything? Do you have all of the evidence? Was any of that evidence, you saw that in the cell phone case in Florida, right? Because what defense attorneys do to the state is they'll say, oh, bad cops, right? Where's your chain of custody?
Uh-huh.
Where did you put this evidence? What are you talking about? You did this and this and this. You know, I think the longer you wait, the more holes there are to poke, right?
Yeah.
In the state's case, even if there's tons of evidence to meet the beyond a reasonable doubt standard, you're going to create more and more doubt the longer you wait to ask people about something that happened 7 years ago.
And that's the ideal defense attorney. It's like,
right.
What were you doing on this day at 1:18 p.m. 6, 7 years ago? I mean, if he decided to charge him today, it wouldn't go to trial today. It'd be another year.
Right. And I'm gonna just CYA myself here for a second. If I've said anything slightly unbreaded or inappropriate, I apologize right now. It is so early in the morning, and I woke up to a very nasty story about my opponent deciding to change his mind willy-nilly on an obvious case.
I think you've been very fair.
So I appreciate that. I hope to be fair. And Sim, come debate me. Stop hiding behind the ACLU and other organizations. Let's go.
And again, he is welcome on here to talk to me face to face, because I still have a grudge from 27 years ago to talk to him about.
He doesn't like people who have grudges against him. So that might be the bait he needs.
And I'm all about fair. I'll have anybody on my channel to talk about anything, but I don't pull punches. I'm being critical of you and highly questioning of you as well. But he's got a lot to answer for here. Quickly, just 3 quick things, then we'll jump into this. One of them is from my Beavers unit mod. Are you going to play the one with the 3 cops on the one man with the camera? If you're talking about the one in Arkansas we watched last week, we're going to go into that right after this one here. So yes, the Arkansas deal. There's some more information there that make me even angrier about that one. Grimwolf said some training in jiu-jitsu gives one more tool. There's a saying in the military that if you get close enough to use your bayonet, you effed up. You don't want bad guys with knives to get that close to you. At that point, they deserve to be dropped if they're coming at a police officer with a weapon and they're that close. So yeah, personally, it's good exercise and good brain training, but in an actual situation with armed people, nah, I can't say that would be good for the police. Execution. Oh, thank you so much for the super chat here. Hey, Jeff and Danny, this is just my usual throw money at some YouTuber donation. Great show, you two. Well,
hey, don't throw money at him. Hey, throw money at my campaign. Oh wait, is that pounds?
It's pounds, but just so you know, on behalf of my YouTube channel, I will be making $100 donation to your campaign here at the end.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. And everyone else, please donate. All these ads and all of this campaigning doesn't come cheap. Everything costs money, and it's like I said, I have to win, not for me. I have to win for everyone else. And there's something else to keep in mind in these police cases. Should police have to die or put themselves at greater risk of death and great bodily injury as part of their role and obligation to the public? So, meaning if there was a bullet coming at someone, should they have to jump in front of the bullet to save that person? I'm interested to know the chat's thoughts on that.
Well, let's watch them as they come in here. But in the meantime, let's hit this 911 call. This is what started the events that led up to this criticism of the Salt Lake police.
Hold on. Someone in the chat said, "Grift like you mean it, lady. Be more forceful." Damn it, give me your money, people. You want to see a change? You want to be safe? You don't want us to become like San Francisco, LA, Chicago, or New York? And I hope that you've balanced my mic. Give me your money. If you don't give me your money, I can't do anything. There, how's that for a grift?
No, I can't even grift for myself after that. And they can make donations through your website at da4da.com. They need to make the donation and give their email address so you can check all your legal boxes, if I remember correctly.
I seriously do appreciate every single donation, and not to be so forceful. Any amount you guys donate or don't donate, just your prayers, your love, spreading the word, calling and telling your friends, that all matters. So thank you very much.
Now, date of the incident, 14 August 2022. Date of release, August 26th. Oh, Jesus. Brandon Lesko, geez, thank you again. I'll funnel my money through Jeff. You don't want your boy Brandon's name associated with your campaign. Yeah, we'll take care of it. Thanks, Brandon. You the man.
I didn't hear that. I don't know that. Yeah. I'm not allowed to accept donations through other people. I have to disclose you, Brandon. I apologize. So if you are going to be involved in sending me money from other individuals, as I can't know about it.
Yeah, well, that's not going to happen, Brandon. Sorry. Thanks for the $50. She's still getting 100.
What amount goes to YouTube too?
30%.
Woo! Yeah. Don't pay for Susan. Pay for me.
Just go directly there to DA4DA. That's the number 4 DA, number 4 DA.com.
Okay.
All right. What started this particular event we're going to look into? A 911 call from a local brewer.
Tim speaking.
Hi, Salt Lake City 911. Somebody dialed. Is there a police, fire, or medical emergency?
I'm down at Fisher Brewing Company, and a guy just tried to run in and steal beer.
What is the address?
He's in his underwear, and he's just running around. Definitely a danger to himself or maybe the traffic around here, too. He is northbound on 300 West, just north of 800 South.
Okay, what is the address this happened?
At 320 West, 800 South.
Okay, just repeat the address one more time to make sure I have it correct.
Yeah, 320 West, 800 South.
And a phone number that you can reach?
Yeah.
Giving the
what
address.
Is your name?
My name is Tim.
Okay, what's the name of your business?
Fisher Brewing.
Oh, sorry, you did say Fisher Brewing. Did he get away
with
it?
this gentleman. No, he's in gray boxers. I'm watching him run north on 300 West.
What race is he? White, black, Hispanic?
He looks to be Hispanic or Native American.
Okay, and how old is he approximately?
Probably 30 years old.
So we've basically got a man running around in his underwear trying to rob
Black
stores.
hair
That's a
and
clue
gray
that something
boxers.
might not be
And
right.
that's all
Okay,
he's wearing.
is his hair short or is it long?
Short hair.
Okay, does he have any weapons?
Nope, but he's running around crazy, very erratic. He just jumped in and out of the road. Yeah, he's throwing stuff.
Is he violent?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he just like more or less attacked the person at our door and ran through a couple of other customers who tried to stop him. So
Okay.
definitely mental health issues going on. So I'd send if you've got mental health resources, send
Okay,
them out.
is he still northbound on 300?
And again, I think that's important. So the information the police have at this point is he possibly is having some mental health issues. The fact he's running around in his underwear in the middle of traffic, assaulting people in a brewery is another good sign. The police are all aware of this, and I think they do the appropriate thing.
Northwest?
Does he
Northbound
have any
300.
weapons? Does he have any
Yeah.
weapons? He's naked, ma'am. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's clear he's unarmed. So just to be clear.
West on the west side. He's almost to 700 south.
Okay, we'll get an officer there as soon as we can. If he returns or if anything changes or gets worse in any way, give us a call back and let us know. Okay?
Will do. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Now that's the 911 call. That's what triggers all of this. And what it turns out, reading the news later and things that came to light after all this happened, apparently he was picked up earlier that day for public intoxication and taken to a detox facility or something that was non-custodial. Basically, he was free to leave anytime he wanted to, and he left. And later on in the afternoon, this is happening. So it's been an ongoing thing. And now we get into this article. There's two articles from the Associated Press that I think are highly, highly critical of the officers as well as highly manipulated. And this see the first one, which one's the short one? Okay. So this is the first article from the Associated Press talking about this. After the guy, all we know is the guy died at this point. They show up, they take the guy into custody, and he dies. Well, what does the Associated Press think of all of this? This is the article from the Associated Press. Scrolling back up, there's a still picture here of them taking him into custody. A caller to 911 in Salt Lake City said a man had to come into a brewery in his underwear, tried to steal beer, and was running around in the street, posing a danger to himself and to drivers. Police tried to detain the man. Soon, Nikon Brandon was dead. After the Salt Lake City Police Department on Friday released body camera footage of the August 14th fatal encounter and the 911 recording, activists on Saturday were asking why an unarmed person wound up dead and were accusing police of using disproportionate force. Stealing a beer does not equate to a death penalty, said Lex Scott, founder of Black Lives Matter Utah. I don't care if this man has robbed 10 banks in one day. He didn't deserve to die. He deserved to make it to court. The death of Brandon, who is 35, comes as the United States is seeing uncounted numbers of police killings of unarmed people, many of whom are suffering a mental health crisis. Activists have called for reforms, saying rather than armed police who can often escalate situations, a better solution would be for special mental health crisis teams to respond. Brandon's Facebook page said he'd attended Southwestern Indian Polytechnic Institute in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and worked for a firm that sells appliances, plumbing, and hardware. Many people who posted on the page expressed shock and grief over his death. The 911 caller said that a man had come to Fisher Brewing, attacked a person at the door, and was running around crazy, very erratic. He just jumped in and out of the road. Definitely mental health issues, the caller said. So if you've got mental health resources, send them out. Instead, body cam footage shows a police officer get out of his patrol car and order Brandon to stop. When he resists and puts and puts up a fist and appears to reach for the officer's holstered pistol. Another officer pushes Brandon to the ground, and 2 officers try to pin him down. Stop, one of the officers says repeatedly as Brandon is on a gravel bed between the road and the sidewalk and continuing to push against the officers. No de-escalation attempts by the police are visible or audible in the footage from the 9 body-worn cameras, even though an executive order signed by Salt Lake City Mayor Aaron Mendenhall 2 years ago requires all Salt Lake City Police Department officers to use de-escalation techniques before using force.
They wait, any force? Does that mean any force? Because otherwise they just contradicted themselves.
Yes, they did. This article is majorly flawed and majorly prejudicial and majorly flirting with disaster for the fact. Wait till we get to their edited video of this incident. So yeah, de-escalation tactics are no longer suggested or preferred. They are mandatory prior to using force to effect an arrest unless it would be unreasonable to do so, Mendenhall said in announcing the police reforms. See, they kind of left out the unless it would be unreasonable to do so in the preceding paragraph. Which were prompted in part by the killing of George Floyd by Minneapolis police in 2020. Salt Lake Police Department spokesman Brent Weisberg said of the August 14th incident, as the body-worn camera video shows, this is a situation that rapidly unfolded. It was a chaotic situation, and our officers were required to make very fast decisions to get a situation under control that was very tense. Before Brandon walked into Fisher Brewing, he had been taken by South Salt Lake police to a detox facility after they received a report of a man acting confused and scared at a park just after 1 p.m. on August 14th. Officers determined he was intoxicated, took him to the facility, and cited him for public intoxication, but the facility is not a detention center and patients can leave at their will, KUTV reported. The Salt Lake City Police Department officers encountered Brendan at 3:22 p.m. In the videos, he is not heard speaking during his struggles with the officers, except for maybe a couple of words that are unclear. A minute later, a third officer arrives. Video shows Brandon grabbing onto his holster and gun. They finally manage to cuff Brandon's hands behind his back as he lies on the gravel, belly down. We want to help you, an officer says. You've got to stop fighting with us. Sounds like a little bit of de-escalation there.
You think? How about hey, we're just going to hold you here for a minute, buddy. Yep. And you're reaching for my gun, but I'm not going to shoot you. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to punch you or do anything else. We're just going to try and hold you here and figure out what's going on. That's what I'm getting so far.
Yeah, we want to help you. You've got to stop fighting with us. After a few seconds, Brandon stops moving. An officer taps Brandon on the shoulder with his gloved hands and asks, "Can you hear me?" 3 times. Brandon doesn't respond. Get him in recovery, an officer commands, and the officers roll Brandon onto his side. "Come on, man," an officer says. All the camera footage released by the police goes dark at that point. Salt Lake, and of course, that was criticized as well, as we'll see here later. Salt Lake City Police said in a press release that officers began to perform medical aid at 3:27 p.m. A minute later, they administered the first of multiple doses of Narcan and started performing chest compressions. At 4:16 p.m., it was like 45 minutes later, SLCPD is notified that Mr. Brandon died. The exact time of death is unknown, the news release said. The police department said a thorough investigation was being conducted by an outside agency, and the department's own internal affairs unit would conduct a separate investigation. Ray Duckworth, operating chairperson for Black Lives Matter Utah chapters, wants to know why the released footage doesn't show the officers trying to help Brendan. "We don't even have proof they actually administered aid. We don't have proof that they actually administered Narcan," Duckworth said. Weisberg said the police spokesperson said footage of the resuscitation efforts was not released out of consideration for Brandon's family, which I kind of agree with. You don't want to watch. Resuscitation is a violent process. Chest compressions, break ribs, jamming Narcan needles into chest cavities and things. I don't know if I'd want that released either. But and clearly it exists.
It's heartbreaking. It really is hard to watch your family member go into death and not be revived. It's traumatizing.
And the AP also released a very edited video of the incident, which is it's not going to let me do it normally, so that's as good as we're going to get.
So, and just to be clear, Jeff, I think they changed the law to make it so that the DA actually, or not the DA, but the police have to release body cam footage within a certain period of time. So that's why I think the DA has an onus to speak up and make these decisions a little bit faster. And I think that was the original intent of the law, was to basically force the DA to start making decisions.
So we've got the police thing here. This is the guy. Where are we going? Here we go. Of an unarmed man who wound up dead.
Does it have sound?
Yes. Do we not have sound?
I don't have sound. Chat, is there sound for you guys? Also, Rory, stop making funny jokes. I read them at the most inopportune times.
Okay. So, and there's not much. So there's no audio. Yeah. See, this embedded video stuff can be really quite hit or miss on StreamYard.
All right.
We'll get to the
have no sound. So
yeah, we'll get to the actual sound laden video in a bit. Basically, you can just read it here, and that tells you all you really need to know.
Oh, this is just so heartbreaking. Honestly, it's so sad.
Well, and what you can't hear here again, they're saying, do you want to sit up? You got to cooperate. You got to stop struggling. You got to stop fighting. But this is the excessive force that they're apparently using in this situation. Yeah. So that's why I didn't have the video. I didn't bring up the right version of the window. All right, I boomered out there for a second. So the Salt Lake City Police Department, they've released their own timeline of what happened, and we'll get to that. Then we'll look at the actual individual videos. They give the background here. Our police officers come to work. Yeah.
This is the unedited video, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Which I think is what is required under the law. And to be clear, I don't think that law passed until most recently. So I think the reason we have these 4-year case decisions stems from the concept that maybe video was released, but it was 4 years ago and no one knows anymore. Right. Yeah. So you can hold off. But I think moving forward, since the passage of this law, there is this pressure on the DA to make a charging decision a little bit sooner than 4 years, presumably.
Yeah. When Brandon asked, wait, did they shoot this guy? No, he tried to grab their guns twice. They tackled him. They got his arms behind him and handcuffed him, and that's it. At this point, I haven't seen anything that says how or why he died.
I haven't seen it either. And let's say it was drug related. It's common for people with mental illness to self-medicate via the use of illicit drugs. It's possible that he could have overdosed. It's also possible that he was in a state of excited delirium.
Could have been a heart attack. It could have been anything. Exactly.
Maybe his heart rate went up and spiked and he had a heart attack. Maybe he had a stroke. We don't actually know.
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking to watch in this particular case. The first case is a little bit different because he's violent and he's already, beat his girlfriend, punched out or broken windows, tried to explode the house, tried to, commit suicide and or hurt someone else. Right. That's a very different set of circumstances than this poor guy who I have a lot of sympathy for, who's clearly just really unwell.
And the officers in this case that we're talking about now are coming under a lot more criticism than the other guy did. And let's see if it's justified or not.
It goes back to that violence element, I think, too, where he's not particularly violent. He is violent, right? I think in the 911 call they said that he was throwing stuff and accosting customers, but it's more, it's not to the same degree of what we would consider violent, right? We would objectively look at this and go, this guy needs some help. Everyone looking at this knows he needs help.
So let's see what the police timeline here is. All videos start with 30 seconds of no audio, and basically what they're saying is everything it's on a 30-second loop, and as soon as you activate the cam, the last 30 seconds is just recorded to see what happened before they activated their camera. So there's 30 seconds of silence. Does that make any sense?
Yes.
It just cycles through 30 seconds of video, and as soon as they hit it, it freezes it. It saves the previous 30 seconds and starts the audio at that point. So 3:16 p.m., the SLCPD's dispatched officers to a call for services at a business. 911 advised the suspect had left the business and was running in the roadway. Officers' actions. The police. I can't say SLCPD repeatedly. The police located the suspect around this address as shown on the body cam video. An officer ordered the suspect to stop, but the suspect did not comply. The video shows the suspect reaching for an officer's duty belt and grabbing onto the officer's gun. Now, from my point of view, my perspective, the officers would have been justified taking him out right then and there. He's trying. Anyway, we'll get into that. The suspect is taken to the ground by another officer. As the body cam video shows, the suspect resisted officers and didn't comply with their commands. A third officer arrives on the scene. Camera shows the suspect grabbing onto the other officer's holster and gun. The video captures an officer saying he's got a hand on your gun. The suspect is still actively resisting and not complying with the commands. A minute later, officers used their police radios and told 911 they had taken the suspect into custody. So we're looking at, from the time the first officer arrived, 22, a minute and a half, basically 2 minutes, 3 at the most. They've got him into custody, and they said, we've got him in custody, and they generate the call for City Fire and Gold Cross. That's the ambulance service, basically, to get there. With the suspect on the ground, the officer, so they've already been called even before he went into whatever distress he was in. And they encourage him to calm down and start preparing to utilize a safety restraint device used to protect people from injury when a person's combative. The officers begin to perform first aid. In 4:16, he's deceased. That's the police side of things. And
so essentially, from the time that they are calling for help, they've within 2 minutes have administered Narcan or trying to.
Yeah, about 3 minutes, and medical is on the way.
So this time is actually a lot shorter than I even thought it was. Okay.
Yeah, and what's important is the Salt Lake use of force policy, the revised policy. And I think it's important to look at that in the context of this. And knowing what's in the policy, I think it's absolutely abysmal what the AP reported. You know, that there was no de-escalation. There was none of this. They just make it sound like it's like they're trying to incite some sort of negative attitudes towards the police rather than looking at it objectively.
Well, if one were to be a cynical person, which I so happen to be, one could easily say that they're trying to draw parallels between this gentleman and George Floyd.
Absolutely. So this is the actual policy use of force. De-escalation, the definition of de-escalation, taking action or communicating verbally or non-verbally during a potential force encounter in an attempt to stabilize the situation and reduce the immediacy of the threat so that more time, options, or resources can be called upon to resolve the situation without the use of force or with a reduction of the force necessary. And I've extra highlighted the things that come into play in this video. De-escalation may include the use of such techniques as command presence, advisements, warnings, and verbal persuasion. That is considered, that those 3 things are considered part of de-escalation: advisements, warnings, and verbal persuasion. Use of force continuum options and tactical repositioning. So what is force? Force is the application of physical techniques or tactics, chemical agents, or weapons to another person. It is not a use of force when individuals allow themselves to be searched, escorted, handcuffed, or restrained.
So in this case, they're saying pushing would be a use of force.
Technically, yes, but the exceptions come later.
Okay.
So if force is just basically using it and touching the other person, unless they agree to be touched. So the use of force. Officers shall only use that amount of. You're not allowed to use force. But you are allowed to use only that amount of force that reasonably appears necessary, given the facts and circumstances perceived by the officer at the time of the event. Not
Again,
perceived by the AP news article.
Right, and this goes back to subjective versus objective
Yes.
observations and decision making.
And who will decide this? The reasonable force will be judged from the perspective of a reasonable officer faced with the same set of facts and circumstances. So would shoving the guy out of the way be a proper response for someone who tries to grab your gun? Probably.
Probably a little less than what would be expected.
And then we go to the de-escalation. What's the de-escalation requirements? When circumstances reasonably permit, we were told by the AP that you must de-escalate before using any force. Only when circumstances reasonably permit, officers must use strategies and techniques to decrease the intensity of a situation, improvise decision-making, improve communication, reduce the level of force needed, and increase voluntary compliance. De-escalation techniques and tactics may include, but are not limited to, here's a laundry list. I've highlighted the ones that I think come into play in this situation. De-escalation techniques: attempting verbal persuasion. Hey, calm down, take it easy, relax, that kind of thing. Establishing rapport, increasing distance and time, finding, using, maintaining available cover. Some of these things just don't apply. Performing a threat assessment, denying access to barricaded and tactically superior. These just don't really apply here.
It does apply to the prior case, though, right?
Yeah,
which is what we all talked about, which is taking some time, maybe, switching out officers, maybe formulating a plan, redevising that plan, taking different tactical positions, all of those things.
And de-escalation is also providing warnings and or advisements. That would mean de-escalation includes someone saying, stop or I'm going to tase you. Do you want to get tased? You don't want to get tased? Stop this. You're going to get shot, whatever. That's considered de-escalation. Rather than shooting someone, you tell them that if they don't chill, that's going to happen.
Which, if you've ever had a girlfriend that doesn't really, or a boyfriend, and you've been in a fight with either of them, that doesn't always work out, right?
Yeah.
You just need to calm down. You just need to be a little more reasonable. And meanwhile, they're aiming a gun at you. Right. So I could see where I like that they say attempting verbal de-escalation, because it is an attempt, right? They can't all be negotiation professionals.
And that comes into the next sentence. An officer's actions, not the outcome, will be the basis for determining if de-escalation tactics were properly deployed.
Interesting.
So the fact it didn't work doesn't mean they weren't properly tried. It just means it didn't work.
Right.
So how about using the use of force to effect an arrest? An officer may only use reasonable force to effect arrest, to prevent escape, or to overcome resistance. An officer who makes or attempts to make an arrest need not retreat or desist from their efforts by reason of resistance or threatened resistance from the person being arrested. The cop doesn't have to back off just because the guy tells them to back off.
Right. So
how do we determine the reasonable use of force? A number of factors should be taken into consideration as time and circumstances permit. Exigent emergency circumstances may not allow you to do all of these things. These factors may include, but are not limited to, immediacy and severity of the threat to officers and others. For example, someone trying to grab your gun from you, that would be an immediate and severe threat to the officers, which would justify use of reasonable force. The conduct of the individual being confronted, the effects of suspected drug or alcohol use, proximity of weapons or dangerous improvised devices, the degree to which the individual has been effectively restrained, and their ability to resist despite being restrained, and the potential for injury to officers, suspects, and others, and whether the individual appears to be resisting or is attacking the officer. The apparent need for immediate control of the individual, prior contacts with the individual, or awareness of any propensity for violence. So these are all things, plus this other laundry list of things to consider when determining the use of force and how much use of force to use. Then we go to the resistance, and these are the difference between what the perpetrator or the suspect is doing and what the officers can do. Force situations are dynamic and require an officer to continually assess the subject's actions to ensure a proper response. Officers will transition to differing degrees or types of force as appropriate. So they're basically saying you have to go through this list and take it one level at a time and then decide if you need to go to the next level or not. Cooperative. The subject responds appropriately and cooperates. If that doesn't happen, then passive resistance. They may not be actively resisting, no overt physical actions, but they're just refusing to obey instructions.
Right, which can matter, right? If you have your hands up, or if you have your hands going down towards your pockets, down towards your waistband, and you've been told multiple times to stop doing that. Or you're reaching around and you're digging in your purse and you've been told multiple times to stop doing that. That definitely makes sense.
Yeah, and so, this can be the guy just like walking away from the police officers. He's not actively resisting. He's just walking away and not listening to you tell him to sit down. The active resistance. The subject physically resists or physically displays their refusal to comply with the officer's orders without being assaultive. That doesn't work. We go to the assaultive level, where if the guy becomes the subject attempts or threatens by an act or gesture to use force or uses force against someone else. Or, for example, the subject may kick or punch or display threatening body language showing the intention to do so. And the highest level that warrants the highest response is a serious bodily injury or death, which I think applies in this situation. And you all can watch the video and tell me whether you agree. The subject's behavior leads an officer to believe on reasonable grounds that they have the intention to or is at imminent risk of causing serious bodily injury or death to the officer or another person. He tried to grab 2 police officers' weapons. I think that indicates a behavior that indicates he wants to cause serious bodily injury to the officers, himself or somebody else.
I need to watch the unedited clips. Because I want to see if he intentionally reached for the weapons to try and draw them, or if his hands were flailing around and he was just grabbing at the officers. That matters as well. So I'm really curious.
So to me, and I don't want to poison the well here with viewers or you, but I'm thinking he's already reached. I think he's already reached this highest level of threat to the officers. Now, the officers, this is their use of force options. Just the officer's presence. You see the cop, you go, okay, I'm not going to beat the old woman in the park because there's a cop watching me. That's basically no force. Communication. An officer can use both verbal and nonverbal communications to take control. If it's time to take physical control, there's soft techniques used to contain subject behaviors less likely to cause injury, immobilization techniques, grabbing the arm, escort techniques, articulation control, wrist grabs, pressure points, things like that. And the hard techniques used with the intention of preventing the continuation of the behavior to allow the application of a control technique. These can include barehanded techniques such as punches, kicks, or grounding. So those are the levels of force that the police can do. Nothing. You just be there, look, talk to them. Soft techniques, arm grabs, things like that, or punching you in the head until you comply. And then weapons. There was no weapons in this case, so we don't need to look at the weapons. Officers should use advisement, warnings, and verbal persuasion when practicable and reasonable. And I believe that's the last of the relevant things that I saw. There's like warning shots and things like that. Oh, what's this? Medical considerations. Okay, if once it's reasonably safe to do so, medical assistance shall be obtained for any person who exhibits signs of physical distress, et cetera, et cetera. They had the medical on the way before the guy had any type of reaction. So that's the basis there. That's the policies we have. let's watch the main video cam and see what y'all think of this. Was that
Which those policies seem reasonable, and there were a lot
do.
of catch-alls in there as well, right? You know, any and all exigent circumstances should be considered as well, right? These all of these things matter, and we really should be just. It was. The only thing I don't like about these policies is it's more friendly advice than a policy at that point, where you're just saying, I would like you to please try and de-escalate the situation whenever possible. Thank you. You know, it doesn't seem to have the same, it doesn't carry the same weight. It doesn't have the same amount of teeth. So if we're looking at holding police officers accountable, we need to be more clear with police officers, set a clearer standard, and then make it very clear what the expectation is. That's my only issue with that particular, the way that policy is crafted seems very meh. You know, there's no clear boundaries. There's nothing that says if A, then C, right? If A plus B equals C. There's none of those elements there that I would like to see in that policy.
I don't know how much that you could actually put in a practical policy there, just because everything is so different. Every situation is so fluid. And I think the entire policy manual is like 878 pages long. I think it was. Yeah,
right.
I think you kind of get into
that leads me to my second point, which is don't come to me once I'm DA and say that I'm irresponsible and not holding police accountable because the law and the policies are crafted the way that they are, right? If you want black and white law, you need to go and change the policy, change the law to make it black and white. If we want it to be practical, if we want it to be applicable, we want it to be reasonable, this is where you have to trust the decision-making of the DA. And this is where it's so vitally important that there's consistency and honesty and transparency with the public as to the decisions made by the DA. It needs to be reasonably timed. It needs to be consistent, and it needs to make sense.
Okay, let me scroll up real quick. Nope, I haven't missed any super chat, so we can just jump right into this.
You did miss one super chat, and I will say thank you so much.
Oh wait, we got here. I missed two of them. Brandon Lesko said it was a joke. Apologies, that's him making the donation through me. I can't make political donations due to my profession. Okay, got that out of the way. And then Flux, I'm sending Dani money, and I don't even live in Utah. Someone has to start doing something, man. She got the fire. I want to see her in a higher office.
Thank you, Flux. I appreciate it. Please, all of you, donate. You want to see a difference. You want to see someone who's reasonable. You want to see some consistency and some consistency in law enforcement. You want to see me bring on the fire. I will bring about hellfire. You don't have to worry about that. But I do need the money. I need the resources. I am not a Lannister if it is not clear enough. You know, I may have the weapons, I may have the fire, I may have all the gifts that God has given me, but I need that coin. So please donate. Thank you. That's my goal. Do it now.
Good. All right, let's take a look at this. This is the dash cam of the first officer to arrive on the scene. Wait, here we go. Make it big. Put us down here. That might block something. We'll put us over here. Again, we've got 30 seconds of silence. We can skip through till he gets out of his car.
Stop.
Okay, that was the first contact there. That's when he was first pushed away. This is where he reaches. To me, he reaches clearly for this officer's weapon.
Poor face. Look how scared he is. I just, like I said, my heart goes out to this man.
And again, this is a person who was either intoxicated and or having a mental episode earlier that day. And yeah, it's. I mean, to me, he's clearly reaching for the officer's weapon, whether it was intentional or just part of the illness. But it's unfortunate. But
why wasn't he committed? This is what gets me.
Yeah.
Right? Clearly, whoever released him from this facility without giving him some kind of clearance, without calling the police ahead of time and being like, this guy needs to go up to UNI, which is the University of Utah Mental Health Center up on the hill. I mean, something had to have been done earlier. Yeah. That's where I see there's a failure here in mental health services and true evaluation of this individual. Clearly, they left not in the best of states. They shouldn't.
And I
have
say
leave
kudos
without-
to the officers for not dropping him right then and there.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think the officers are exhibiting the appropriate level of restraint. Good for them.
I would guess in a larger city, he would have been beat senseless and or shot at this point already. So the other officer tackles him, takes him down.
Stop. Stop. Stop.
And so here we have the repeated, they said no de-escalation. Here we have the clearly de-escalation saying stop, stop, don't resist, get on your back and you stop. I think they're doing a good job of trying to de-escalate this terrible situation. He's still resisting. They're still using the soft techniques, still de-escalating.
You fuck up. Stop. Stop.
Did he try and bite him?
Stop.
Probably.
That's what it looked like.
Yeah.
Stop.
Well, he's on his side here.
Yeah.
Stop. Stop.
And see, this is something you see in especially from the Arkansas, the guy's laying on his side, and to try to get him to comply, you've got 3 officers pounding his head into the concrete, slugging him in the head, kneeing him in the kidneys repeatedly.
Whoa.
These guys are here.
I don't know about the Arkansas case. What was the alleged crime that occurred?
He threatened someone in another city with a knife, and allegedly he had tried to tackle one of the police officers.
Allegedly.
When they were trying to arrest him, yeah.
And that warranted them punching him repeatedly in the face.
Oh, it's if you haven't seen it, that's coming up next, and it's bad news. But this here to me is still
lucky for me. Unfortunately for them, I do have to go to work. And when I say unfortunately, I mean unfortunately for the victim. I'm sorry. If you're being assaulted by the police, you're a victim.
How much time do you have left?
I can stay till the conclusion of this case.
Okay. So. There's a few other angles after this. I don't know if you.
I'm fine with a few other angles. And I expected that you would be doing that, which is why I'm hedging.
Okay. All right. So here the officers are still, to me, using very soft techniques. The wrist locks, the grabs, trying some pressure points.
Absolutely. And I know this is totally subjective, but you can hear the lilt in my own voice. You can hear it in the officer's voice too, saying, "Hey man, stop. Hey, come on, stop." And there's this pleading element there, not as much of a command.
Yeah.
Stop. Right now.
Okay, now it's getting commandy. Okay, now he's grabbing for weapons.
Grab his hand. Grab his hand. All right. Stop. Right now. Stop. Put your hands behind your back. Put your hands behind your back. Do it now. Put your hand behind your back. One cup on. I gotta get off there. You gotta get off there. I gotta say. Stop resisting.
Okay, let's pause there just for a second. I don't know if the audience heard that, but did I just hear another officer? You gotta get off him. You gotta get off him. because I thought I had heard that, which is indicative of them all being very cautious of their own behavior in the circumstance. They're all very aware.
Let's bump it back a little bit.
Yeah.
I gotta get off him. He's gotta get off him. I gotta say.
Yeah, see, I think he's saying you got to get off him. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he does.
And he does. So all the cops are very self-aware at this point, very aware of their surroundings. No one's acting in that adrenaline state of mind that I was talking about earlier with the prior shooting, and I mean, which is what I suspect is the case with the prior shooting. I don't know that, obviously.
And I mean, and this is just a basic problem that is just problematic with this type of a situation where you have 5 people on you. Your body's natural reaction is to resist and fight back.
Absolutely. And it's also natural, for those who don't know, when you're losing oxygen and when you're going through what I call the death throes. I don't know if that's the actual term for it, but it's often common to latch on to things and to have that muscle spasm and then retention. So that's why I say I wanted to see if he was just grabbing, sporadically, or if he was trying to get a hold of a weapon. Now, granted, if you feel like you're dying, and he's clearly nonverbal, he's not verbally protesting. He's not verbally indicating what his needs are, what his pains are, if he is actually dying. And there's no way an officer would know that. Putting myself in the position of the man who's going through what's clearly an episode mixed with potentially drugs, some kind of intoxication, it makes sense that he's grabbing for things and trying to survive, right? But being nonverbal, especially if you're going through either a manic episode or drug intoxication, add those two things together, it's more likely than not he's not communicating his needs to the police.
And I think that
George Floyd, where George Floyd is repeatedly saying, I can't breathe, call my mom, I'm dying, right? That's very different than this circumstance where it's not clear to me the man's capability of verbal communication at this point.
And I think the police are doing a very good job here of handling someone who they know is just resisting and trying to fight, because that's what humans do in this situation.
I 100% agree.
They could start whacking him with their batons. They could start sending volts through him. They could start pounding him with their fists, but they're still doing the, hey, calm down, let go, relax.
Yeah, get off him. Hey, let him breathe. All of those things. They're more verbal of his needs than he is.
And so now they get him cuffed. Nobody's on him. Nobody's pounding him.
No cuffs. There we go. 413 83.
Everybody's trying to calm down at this point. It's 15:25.
Stop.
And there's really no more communication here during the rest of this. Just calm down, relax. Do you want to sit up? Yeah.
Oh, they ask him that. Do you want to sit up?
Yeah. Would you sit up? You got to calm down. I think this comes up here in just a second. But he's still breathing fine, seemingly.
We might need a wrap. Yeah, we need a wrap.
Still resisting, pulling off the handcuffs. Yeah. See, now there's the kneeling restraint. And it's being applied to his shoulder, then it gets off.
Stop, man. Relax, dude. No. You just started running.
Dude, talk to us, man. Talk to us. Space we can give you.
You want to sit up?
Yeah.
Well, you sit you up if you stop.
You got to be cooperative, though, man. We want to help you. You got to stop fighting with us. Hey, relax.
Okay,
man,
so go ahead and pause. This again goes back to that issue of not being able to verbalize what his needs are. So it's not entirely clear to the officers or to us as observers whether he's resisting at this point or whether or not he's trying to say, yeah, I want to sit up with his nonverbals, because he's not verbalizing. So this is a particularly tragic situation for the officers involved, for this gentleman and for the family. So I completely understand why they didn't release the video of them trying to resuscitate. So sorry, continue.
All right. Rock with us. You gonna be cool?
And they're holding him by his legs, his hips, and the only time that they're pushing on him is when he's trying to, you know.
I slammed my knee to that fucking ground. You all right? No, all right. Hey, someone switch him out. I'm good.
Okay, and there's that switch out idea, right? Having someone who's not injured, not involved. Let's switch out. That's great.
I slammed my knee. Not fine. I'm good.
And so that's the end of his video.
Okay.
And then we'll go straight into the second officer to arrive. There's like 9 of these things, but there's 2 long ones and then 2 short ones. This is the second person on the screen. And the only thing that I saw on this was there's one point where he gives a very light punch to the guy's back. I mean, which to me was just kind of like a, hey, you know, like it wasn't like a thing to me. But it's like one. And you also get a better view of him reaching for the second cop's weapon. But let's bring that up real quick here. We have the 30 seconds of.
And can I just preface this really quick? When I say these things are tragic for the police, it's clear to me in this video that the police don't mean to kill him or cause him serious harm. And so when that results, even if they had any minor interaction with them, it's very traumatizing for people. If you didn't really mean to hurt someone and then you did, and I know there's going to be a lot of high criticism here saying, yeah, well, that's the cop's job. But regardless, they're still human beings. And so I do feel sympathy for everyone involved in this case.
It sucks for everybody involved in this case. I mean, here this is him getting out of his car, and he's the one that tackled the guy after he reached for the other officer's weapon.
So this is tackler. Yeah, that's what I'm going to call him. Okay.
Yeah. See, that's where he's clearly reaching for the guy's gun.
Reaching for the guy's gun, trying
He's
to
got his hand on his gun at this point. Yeah.
Can you go back just for 2 seconds because it's kind of laggy?
Oh, is it?
The video, I think the camera footage itself is laggy. So he turns,
that's after he shoved him away.
He turns and pivots towards the officer. So.
That's where he's got his hand on his gun.
Okay.
Now his hand is closed around the gun. And then the guy just takes him down.
I'm going to tase you. You want to get tased?
That's de-escalation according to the policy. We're going to tase you. Do you want to get tased? Chill out.
Officer. Can we get third? Stop.
So I think this is where they called for the medical.
Third officer and
okay, that's where they called for more officers. Never mind.
Hey. Stop. All right. What did I say? Stop. 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 Right here. Right here. Stop. 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 Right now.
That was the one punch.
Grab his head. Come grab his head.
Can you rewind that? I'm sorry. I got a notification from my husband that our internet's laggy. So I apologize to the audience if they're also having some lag.
So was it before this? Okay. I think this was the one punch right here.
Stop. 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 Right now.
Where are we at here? Yeah, that right there.
I almost feel like that wasn't really a punch as much as just like
grab his hand.
Trying to, I don't know. I don't think it was intentional. I mean,
Yeah. There he is trying to reach for the gun again.
See, but there he is. You see his hand sliding, and he's reaching also for other stuff on the belt, which is
yeah.
All right. Stop. Right now. Stop. Put your hands behind your back.
I mean, regardless, the cops would have been justified in using way more force than they have.
Yeah.
Do it now. Put your hand behind your back. We can't get his other hand.
But they really are behaving perfectly fine at this point.
I gotta get off him. He's got to get off him. I got his head. Knock it off. Stop resisting. Come on. Stop resisting. Come on.
See, and again, more stop resisting, stop. I don't know where the AP gets off saying there was no de-escalation at all.
No, this is the best.
That was the punch there. That's what I meant. That was the one punch.
Oh, okay. So it's more of like again, it goes back to that reminder of, hey, there's a
that right there.
Right? Yeah. Like, cut it out.
Yeah.
We can and will use more serious forms of force.
Knock it off.
Throw the cuffs.
There we go.
And from there, it's basically the same until the other officer walks away.
Space we can give you. You want to sit up? We can sit you up if you stop.
See, and that's where I say that's where nonverbals can be confused.
You gotta stop fighting with us.
Hey, relax, man. Okay, take some breaths. You're all right. Talk with us. You gonna be cool?
Pull the pants down.
The way I see it is, if this was my family member, right now looking at this, if this was my family member, do I feel like the cops are giving him a fair shake, treating him well? And my answer to this is given the circumstances. This is what we would want a mental health unit to respond with, right? These counselor crisis incident people. This is all non-lethal force.
And this is where he's suddenly non-responsive.
Oh, see, that's very quick. Can you go back?
Yeah.
Sorry, I was talking. I should not have interrupted.
Yeah, see, that was just from like he was still breathing
That
when the
was
other
second.
officers. Yeah, the other officer stood up. This officer was stood up. He was still breathing and literally just gone.
Just seconds. Breathe.
Hey, someone strip him out.
Sounds like he's calming down. And then that's it.
Can you hear me?
Yep. That fast.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
And then they immediately roll him over and start the work camp.
Okay, roll him on his back.
Oh, that's tragic. I wouldn't want to watch the resuscitation video.
Yeah. And we really don't even need to watch the other two videos. One showed one officer kind of gave him some light, two light knees to the back of his, like to his butt or his hip. And then the other one just showed how they were doing joint locks and things to try to get his hands behind his back. But so, I mean, this differs way different than the first video. Where,
yes.
To me, this is activists trying to stir some shit up. But then how do we know they tried to help him? And why do we know this happened? Even if he robbed 10 banks, he didn't deserve to die. The officers didn't want him to die. Something happened. And I'm sure we have to wait for the autopsy to see what the cause of death was. But they make it sound like the officers killed this guy when clearly that was not the case. There was just some medical event that occurred there.
Right. And it's like I said, this one is particularly heartbreaking. There is no weapon. That's the other distinction here. There is no weapon involved. There is no, threats to the officers or other people's life. And again, it goes back to the officers when responding in the first case, they know this guy is violent. Okay. They know that based on the allegations of the girlfriend, and presumably when they show up, the windows are in fact smashed. Or broken in some way, right? There's something else indicating, well, and he came out initially with the blade and then walked back in the house, right? So officers are jumping into situations with the information they have at the time, not hindsight. And I think this is particularly interesting where based on the information they had, you could hear from the brewery, the owner calls and even insinuates, hey, this guy may be having a manic episode. He may not be well. He's clearly unwell. He's running around in his underwear. I don't want him to die. I don't think he's that big of a threat, but he is a threat to himself, right? He's jumping in traffic and I don't want to see him get hurt.
Well, so, I mean, the first video we saw, it was questionable. Was the use of force justified by the officer in the circumstances they were in? This one is clearly, and they clearly de-escalated. I mean, at least dozens of times, do you want to get tasered? Chill out, relax, stop. Dozens of times they tried to de-escalate it, regardless of what the AP says. And compare and contrast that with this 48-second video from Arkansas. And we'll let you go if you need to go.
No, I'm just double checking. Sorry, I got a message.
No, I just mean you gave me until the end of that video.
Right now I'm working a job, so I told my boss I might be a little late to work. So she hopefully is watching. Oh, yeah. I don't think I can watch this to start my day.
Same thing.
Officers have been suspended
Oh,
after
Jesus.
a video went viral showing them beating a man on the ground. In the video, 2 Arkansas sheriff's deputies and 1 police officer are seen violently punching, kicking, and kneeing the man. Investigators
saying get rid of this.
Say all of this happened after the suspect threatened a gas station clerk and tried attacking officers. The law enforcement officers,
a little bit of
will
a
be
difference
suspended
here.
pending the outcome of multiple investigations. The suspect was hospitalized and then booked into jail yesterday.
Hello, I'm Mark Brown.
Yeah, little bit of a difference there in how pretty much the same situation was handled.
I mean, it's not pretty much the same situation because he did go in and threaten the clerk directly. And he had allegedly committed violence prior, but that being said,
it was in another city, actually. It was in another town. He rode his bicycle to this location and they found him later. And according to the news reports, the police said, do you have a weapon? He said, yes, and dropped it.
Okay. So okay. Yeah, that's awful. That's really awful. Those officers should not probably continue in the line of duty at all. As a matter of fact, that borders on serious assault charges. That's concerning to me. You can't hide behind the badge and beat the shit out of somebody with you and your 2 other officers. I mean, let's put it into context, okay? I would have loved to have seen that beating, and I don't apologize for this. I would have loved to have seen the a-hole who went into the Buffalo store and shot up the store be beat like that guy. I would have loved to have seen that. I would have loved to have seen the Uvalde shooter be beat the snot out of, okay? That's my guttural, visceral reaction as a human being. I hate those kind of people. It disgusts me. And if a cop were to respond by, punching that guy, I wouldn't be quite as disturbed. This is deeply disturbing because this guy has done nothing to warrant that type of reaction as far as I'm concerned, just based on that video. I mean, he had a weapon and he dropped it. What are the cops doing?
Well, Russell Wood, a lawyer for the 2 Crawford County Sheriff's deputies, stressed that the 34-second clip doesn't show everything that happened, and said Worcester had earlier attacked one of the deputies, leaving him with a concussion. Wood said in a statement that the deputies' pain compliance strikes didn't do any damage, and that his own violence authorized the officers to use, quote, all necessary force.
Didn't do any damage. The guy went to the hospital for lacerations, and what else did they say? I mean, I don't know how you come out of there without damage, unless you're the freaking Hulk. That's what are you going to believe? Your eyes or what I'm telling you? I mean, look at your eye. Like, just look at the video. That's clearly excessive.
Now there was new evidence shown, apparently.
Now I'm going to contradict myself. I want to see the new evidence, though. Now I'm going to set this out.
To me, the new.
Sorry, just for all your viewers, this is my first time really seeing this video. I had seen like barely a clip of it online,
and that's most people's reaction. Is I'll poison the well for this one. Seeing this new evidence, it still doesn't say exactly what happened, and still tasers aren't an option.
Why
CS
can't they
gas
hold
isn't
the
an
guy?
option.
The guy isn't the size of the guy who's just taken down in Salt Lake City. Why can't they hold him?
Yeah. Well, let's see what the new evidence, which is literally a couple of seconds, and to me doesn't really add anything to it. The attorney for the man seen on video being punched is the where were we at here? Wait, is that the article we just looked at? I think that was the article we just looked at. Sorry, let me bring up the right one.
I apologize, and maybe I'm being unfair. Like I said, there's a difference when you're a DA and you're making a decision, and this is why I give myself 60 days, right, to come to a determination on charging, because you're constantly having to, as an attorney and as a DA, reevaluate your own biases, right? Set aside that guttural reaction that I just gave you. You have to work through that, set it aside, and look at the evidence, look at the case in its entirety, and then make a determination. So to all viewers and potential voters, please be aware that this is not indicative of my judgment overall. It's simply my natural reaction to something I just saw that is grossly disproportionate, in my opinion, right now.
Well, DeMonte is here. The Jim DeMonte aggressively attacked one of his deputies and slammed his head into the concrete, which resulted in the deputy receiving a concussion. That's what the sheriff is saying. That DeMonte said Worcester handed over a pocket knife to deputies, but became violent when they tried to arrest him. Deputies and police found Worcester and Mulberry after a gas station clerk a few miles away reported them and spit on her and threatened to cut off her face with a knife. News showed the surveillance footage to attorney David Powell, who is co-counsel for Worcester, the victim. It was the first time he saw the video. What I don't see is Randall picking up an officer and slamming him headfirst onto the ground. Well, let's see what he does see.
CWCrew.com, your source for CW primetime news.
I mean, if he had curb stomped the officer, maybe I'd have a little bit of a different opinion here. But even then, 3 officers all applying this.
Well, the video you're about to see is from
is excessive to me.
Yeah.
Country
You don't
Express
need the
gas
knee,
station
the punching in the head and the punching in the torso. Sorry, I'll stop interrupting.
in Mulberry. Now it shows more of what happened between Randall Worcester, 2 Crawford County deputies, and a Mulberry police officer, all of who are on paid leave until the use of force investigation is complete.
So this is they'll come into frame over here on the right, and this is all the additional thing it shows.
The surveillance video.
That's it right there. That's the new information.
Wait, go back.
Yeah, literally, that's it.
Is complete. The surveillance video from the Country Express gas station.
And then the beating starts.
I see him tackling an officer. I don't see the lifting up part.
Yeah, well, see, why was he forced into the officer from this officer jumping him from behind?
That's what I can't tell either.
And that's what it sort of seems like to me. It seems like he sort of has his arms out as he falls towards the other officer, but I don't see him slamming another officer's head into the ground.
Yeah, here's my hot take. This is the kind of case to take to a jury.
Yeah.
Until the use
look
of
at it
force
again.
investigation is complete.
This surveillance video from the Country Express gas station in Mulberry.
So that's literally all we have. That's all the new stuff right there. And it doesn't sway me in the officer's favor at all. There's tasers, there's gas, there's just laying on top of him.
Well, that's what they did in the prior video. That's my point.
Yeah.
The prior video, the guy was double this guy's size, right? And granted, there's a few differences, right? There's this direct threat of force. There's this riding your bike to an entirely different city to threaten someone else with force. All of these things, threatening to cut someone's face off. I mean, clearly the intent of the defendant or the alleged perpetrator is very different. But even then, can you show me the beating video again? And I apologize to all the viewers. I want to be sure that I'm being correct in stating that there are 3 beatings going on at the same time against one individual who's on the ground.
Yeah, who has his hands here the vast majority of the time.
Right.
How are we doing? YouTube hasn't shut us down yet. That's good. They shut us down last time I did that. I showed this video.
Really? Did they shut down people who showed the George Floyd video?
They took away all the options to super chat. They put me behind 3 different age and violent content checkpoints.
Wait,
in the
the
middle
last
of my
time you
stream.
showed this video?
Yeah.
Oh, well, then don't show it again. Then don't show it again.
But yes,
I can watch
it was
that on
3
my
officers. 3 officers pounding him. There's two from this police station and one from it was 2 sheriffs and 1 police, or 2 police and 1 sheriff. It was one of the 2.
That's
but yeah,
extremely violent.
It was 3 of them wailing on him.
Not extremely, but obviously very violent.
Brendan Lesko, bravo for that. No yielding to mob rule. You need to collect some facts before locking people up as a DA. Collecting facts helps.
Right. Always.
Yeah.
Always.
And my Beavers unit, thank you so much for the super chat mod. Granted, beating stopped when they saw the camera. Oh yeah, that's the other thing they did show that they did. That wasn't in that news clip, but she gets once the guy picked up his head and slammed it into the concrete. She gets out of the car and says, "Stop, leave him alone," or something like that. One cop looks up, and the other cop points at him.
Worse.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know. Doesn't make it worse. At least they stopped beating. But like, what?
Well, yeah, he looks up, and then the other cop points and says, "Back the F up." And so they weren't being threatened, and they weren't in danger of their life while they're telling her to back up. And yeah, that it has a pretty nefarious ending.
Yeah, that's extra smelly. That's extra smelly to me. And the reason I say that, in the George Floyd incident, you had the same thing, right? To an extent, you had the crowd saying, "Get off him, get off him, get off him." But they continued in their course of action. To me, that's not indicative of them being correct in their course of action, but it is indicative of the police officer thinking he's correct in his course of action. Here, where they're stopping as soon as a camera shows up, they knew that they were doing something they shouldn't have been doing.
And they say that there was dash cam footage from the police vehicle, but we haven't seen that yet. They haven't released that. The convenience store released that CCTV. The lady, she showed her video. The police haven't released the dash cam yet.
What about, do they not have body cameras there?
They didn't have body cameras. No, none of them did.
I'm a huge advocate for cameras always.
Absolutely. I think every law enforcement officer should have them all the time.
It's to protect the officers. Could you imagine what kind of stories? Well, I mean, look at the AP story spun against those officers, and they had cameras. They had body cam. The Kyle Rittenhouse case would not have turned out the way it had there not been video of the entire incident start to finish.
Execution sends me a super. You don't have to send me these super chats to remind me to read super chats. I didn't forget. I've got. Thank you so much for that. But I've got you starred here, and you're like next up. Why wasn't he committed? This is the last year. America has more jails than schools or hospitals combined. It's all for profit. I don't know if they have more jails than schools or hospitals combined, but we do have the world's highest per capita prison population.
I will tell you, one of the shames is that here in Utah, at least, I don't know how it is in other jurisdictions, our county jail is the largest provider of mental health services in the state. And so it's often the case that where there's not space at the hospital, they'll take them to jail. I mean, I absolutely agree. This is exactly what I was saying. Why was he not evaluated and committed before any of this occurred? When he was leaving, when he was exiting the detox location or facility.
Yeah, and the only story behind that was it was a non-custodial thing, and they're free to leave whenever they want. But hey, at least give a warning. Hey, dude's free to leave, and he just did.
That's my issue. If we're going to have outpatient care facilities for mental health, there does need to be final checks before you release them back into the general public, because it's like, yeah, maybe there was a cool off period between the time I purchased my weapon to the time that I went to the detox center or to this outpatient mental health center. But I've since determined that I was correct in my initial assessment that suicide is the best option. I mean, that's not what we want to see happening. Yeah. And that's my concern with these outpatient care facilities, is that they're not taking any measures to make sure that people are able to enter back into the world without being a harm to themselves or others. If they are presenting a harm to themselves or others, they need to be committed or get treatment before they can leave.
Yeah. When Rory M says secondary reminder to read super chats, I think I've got them all. Rory, did you send one that I haven't read? Because I scrolled back for about an hour and a half and I can't see any that I haven't read. If I am sorry, tell me what it is and I'll read it anyway. I don't think I did, but if I missed something of yours, Rory, let me know. And don't you don't have to send a super chat to say that. Just I'll look for it in the comments. But I know I've taken way amount of your time. You have your other job to.
Are you getting sleepy?
No, I could go forever and ever and ever, but I told you 2 hours. It's been 3, so I don't want to, I don't want to take your day and your time. But we don't have to run out of here yet.
And I wanted to clarify earlier. I said let's play. What I meant by that is let's evaluate, right? Let's be attorneys and let's look at the facts. Let's look at these cases. Let's look at the video and let's toss around some ideas and some analysis and see if we can't make our own decisions and determinations. So you and I think, disagree on the first case. I think.
Well, do we? I mean, okay, you don't think there was enough to justify going to the expense, the public expense of taking something to trial that you feel is doomed just to be a waste of taxpayer money at the end of the day? Is that unfair criticism?
I think that's an argument that my opponent would make. I think where there's a good case to bring to trial, even if I'm not entirely sure of the outcome, if I've met that initial threshold of probable cause, I bring the case. In that case, looking at the facts as they are, as you presented to me, as what is available through the Salt Lake Tribune. So with that giant grain of salt, with all of that being said, I don't think you can meet that probable cause standard in that case.
Okay.
My personal opinion.
And I would say leave it up to the jury. I would say take it to a jury, even if you're not confident of winning. Even if you don't think, for me personally, I don't want the DA who is going to set his or her minions on people and say, it's about the stats. We need the win. We know you didn't do, even if they know you didn't do something, it's like, let's pressure him into at least copping to a lesser offense so we can chalk up a win, which is so ingrained in the prosecutor's mind. Defense attorneys, they don't lose their job. The public defender guy isn't going to lose his job if his client's found guilty, because the vast majority of them are. You celebrate a win in a big way as a public defender. Prosecutors can lose their jobs if they don't have a good win-loss record.
Well, and here's where and that's a problem. So I'm gonna lean back on just because I'm going to go back to what Nick Rekieta said in one of his live streams, and he says it pretty repeatedly. Now, to be fair, Nick Rekieta is if I understand correctly, a criminal defense attorney, right? So he and I have fundamentally different perspectives of the justice system in a lot of ways, but this is where I do agree with Nick. Attorneys, prosecutors should, if the system's working correctly, should not win every case. As a matter of fact, more likely than not, they should be losing more cases than winning them. I think there is value in bringing it to trial anyway, where you meet the probable cause threshold. For me, with that particular case, it is not clear to me that what his actions were unlawful. And so I don't think it's met that probable cause threshold to me as a prosecutor. And that's the discretion of the prosecutor. That's the risk you have with electing a DA. You may not agree with every single decision they make, but they need to articulate why they've made that decision. Like I said, in this case, I think I would have made that decision after the first expert witness had said, yeah, this was justified, and here's why. If I agreed with them, which is already how I'm leaning, as I said.
Well, I'll give you that just for the sake of argument, even though I think it may be something you would take to a jury. But even if I give you that as a point of argument, that it doesn't meet the threshold, I think it would be a dereliction of duty to say, I don't think this meets it, but let's pass the buck on to a grand jury and let them take the heat.
There's some value to that, though, right? Like I said, if I feel conflicted, right, I think I've made my biases obvious here, where I tend to lean in favor of did law enforcement follow the procedures, the policies, the steps that were made obvious to them, and was it made obvious to them? Was their training consistent? Was that all there? And a lot of people, and these are the people I work with every day. Like I said, I need them to go get me evidence. I need them to go and enforce protective orders. I need them to go conduct search warrants, right? Or conduct searches. I need them to be on their best behavior and doing their best. We're all on the same, we're teammates at least. If not on the same team, we're working together. And so there is some value in having a grand jury, which is sort of like this third party to step in and say, look, you have these biases. And to counteract that bias, this is where a grand jury may be appropriate. So I'm not saying that's necessarily inappropriate. What I'm saying is inappropriate is wasting taxpayer dollars and time and money and expense and, having an officer put on leave. It's not even made clear in that article how long he was on leave. We know he was put on leave. Was he put on leave for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, only for the DA to finally decide it was justified? This isn't the first case that the DA has delayed these charges. We're talking 3 years, 2 years on average. So if you're an officer where it was an obviously justified shooting, right, where it's obviously justified, the guy turned, he fired at the officer, and the officer just so happened to fire better and faster, right? In those circumstances where it's very obvious that the use of force was justified and legal, the DA has held off for 2 years, 3 years. And that officer is left wondering, am I a murderer? Did I do the right thing? Am I going to have, the deceased family member suing me in civil court? What's going to happen to me? And in the meantime, their spouses leave them, the community leaves them. They're ostracized. They're targeted. I mean, it's hell. It's absolute hell. So for the accused and for the accuser, there must be time. This has to be done in a reasonable, timely fashion. That's why the Constitution is written the way it is, right? The Constitution is written in a way that requires that we do things in a timely manner. And when you as a DA are specifically acting as judge, jury, and executioner and saying, I know better than a jury, so I'm not going to bring charges, even if I find that this was unjustified, which he did in the case of Omar Flores, you have now robbed the justice system. You have robbed that justice from the community. So again, I don't have an issue with the grand jury decision. My issue is 3 expert witnesses later, plus a grand jury, all of which is paid for by tax dollars, just because you didn't have the stones to stand up and say, yes, this is my decision and this is why. That's just pure incompetence. as an attorney, as a DA, it's disgusting.
Well, even when you do bring charges, that's a standard prosecution request. You file the charges, and one of the very first things you ask is waive your right to a speedy trial.
Yes.
And the best thing a defendant can do is say no.
Yes.
Being asked to waive your right to a speedy trial means please give us more time to collect more evidence against you.
Which is what I think has been happening in these murder cases, because I don't understand why otherwise their defense attorneys wouldn't be moving to have the trial brought or dropped. The right to a speedy trial is an excellent right, and it's something that we as citizens should absolutely respect, and especially the DA must respect the right to a speedy trial, because it's not just collecting more evidence. Again, stories change over time. We all know this. This is natural humanness. This is how we operate.
Well, and that's so, both sides change their both sides change their stories as it goes along, and that's the classic cross-examination question. Would you say your memory is fresher now, 7 years after the fact, or 2 hours after the fact when you wrote this statement?
Exactly. And so I have issues with all of the DA's inaction in these cases, because it's inaction. And then and I think this is where you're really particularly perturbed. It sounds like he's using the grand jury as a justification to make the decision for him. You were saying that's how I feel. And I agree. I do agree on that point. So there is a super chat, by the way.
Yeah, we had X occasion here saying the top 5 countries with the most people in prison are U.S. with 2 million, China with 1.6, Brazil with 800, India 400. Now this of course has to be taken with a grain of salt. We don't really know what real China numbers are and what constitutes prison in China.
Oh, we know. We know what constitutes prison in China. China is by far the worst, and it's not just being in prison. You want to talk about an injustice system. They literally will decide whether or not you're guilty or innocent the day of trial. You have no rights really I think in some provinces you now have a right to an attorney, but it's not guaranteed. And even if you do have an attorney come, I mean, they're putting their lives at risk by representing you. So do you think they're going to zealously represent you? Probably not.
Yeah, I'm taking China out of the picture.
Take China out, because they literally will go in and cut someone up to harvest their organs, literally the day of.
We are still the leaders in the world for prison population, which is an overall it's an indictment of the system overall. I mean, it's numbers you can't argue with. Take China out of the picture, and we're still there.
So here's my other question. Brazil, do you feel like the justice system in Brazil works at all?
No.
Okay. What about India? What about Russia? Because those are the 3 other top leaders, right? So it's like, okay, yeah, we have this high prison population, but to be
higher than these countries, though.
Higher than all the rest of the world, okay? Higher than the rest of the world. But to be fair, you're not spending, the vast majority of people who spend their time in jail are not spending their whole lives there, right? They're spending a couple of years there. They have over 50 different programs available to help them re-enter into society. Is it a perfect system? Absolutely not. But to say that that's a complete indictment of the justice system, it again cuts both ways, right? On the one hand, yes, we don't want that many people in jail. On the other hand, we also have a lot of people committing crime. And we've decided that jail is, to some degree, a fair punishment for a lot of those crimes, and so, and as it stands right now with no cash bail and everything else that's changed in the past 6 years that we've seen come through, I find it way disgusting and unjust that these victims have zero justice, where there is zero punishment for the perpetrator, where they're sent home not even with ankle monitors, right? And they're allowed to re-victimize the community again and again and again. So call me a conservative, call me old-fashioned, call me evil for wanting to put bad people who've done bad things in jail. Sure. Sure, we're the highest, rate of incarceration, but that's not the measurement that I'm looking at. I'm looking at, is the system fair? Is it being equal? Are you getting due process across the board? Are your constitutional rights being correctly protected? And my guess is this is where the indictment comes in. The answer to that is a strong no. To me, the plea deals in this country and the pressure on DAs to secure plea deals of some kind so that they can say, look, I did something, is far more of an indictment against our system than the incarceration rate.
The part of the system that breaks down for me, which has nothing to do with defense lawyers or DAs or anything, is the prison system itself.
I agree with that.
Rather than being an education place where it's a factory for doing it right the next time.
Right. And I agree. It is. We also have profit prisons, which is.
Oh yeah.
I mean, whenever you incentivize a private industry, that leads to these types of things, right?
Well,
just like we privatized the homeless problem, and so.
Well, it's one thing that Robert Pirzig, that wrote Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance and the follow book Lila. It's what he said about his time in a mental health institution. He said, you're locked in a for-profit situation. You're locked in where if they say, how are you feeling today? If you're saying, I feel completely normal. Oh, well, then you haven't accepted this mental illness and you're just saying things we want to hear. So we have to keep you here longer. But if you say, I'm still suffering. Oh, you need to stay here longer. It's a for-profit, that's what it is. It's there to make a profit. You don't have people there. I think the prison system is where it all falls apart. The recidivism rate is way too high.
I agree that the recidivism rate is way too high, but this goes back to this risk analysis of, do we let people decide to keep making mistakes? Right? Like, what are you going to do? Yeah. I mean, it's like, what can I do to make you stop raping people? What can I do to make you stop diddling kids? What can I do to make you stop robbing?
Some people just need to be taken out. Stop. I won't ask you to comment on that.
I disavow. That wasn't my comment.
No, I mean, that's why I said I won't make you comment on that. But me personally, there's some people I just think have lost the right to breathe my oxygen. And I'm a high proponent of the death penalty. I think it's not used nearly enough. And I think it's used unfairly in a lot of situations. But and that was a problem when I was doing my third year practicing at the public defender's office. They wanted me to move up and help with the felonies. And one the first case was like a murder case. And I said, I think you ought to know that I support the death penalty. I can still represent this and I can still do the job, but I don't think it's a bad thing. But it's just the way it's applied is the problem for that. But I won't put any of that on you. That's way beyond the scope of what we're talking about here tonight.
No. I'll take the bait. I'm going to take the bait right now. You ready? I think as a prosecutor, you have the obligation to enforce the law. If the death penalty is available to me as a tool, I will absolutely be utilizing it. And that's it. You take it away, I'm not going to shed tears over not having it. I'm very neutral when it comes to death penalty. That's it. I'm very neutral, despite my earlier guttural reaction to the beating and me saying, I wouldn't mind if the Uvalde shooter was beaten. Despite that, I do believe in the presumption of innocence, and I generally like to have my opinions tempered, and that's my take on the death penalty. I think it's a lot of temperance. I think it should be rare. I think it should be reserved. Those are my general thoughts. Because again, it goes back to that unequal application. And it again goes to plea deals that maybe shouldn't have happened, right? Where you're scaring someone into taking a plea deal when they know they're innocent, where there may be exonerating evidence there, but they just kind of take the deal because they're so afraid. But that being said, there's also cases where a plea deal makes sense in the sense that I I throw out the death penalty, right? I say, this is a perfect death penalty case. You're going to get the chair, right? Or you're going to get the little shot in the arm. I say that to a defendant so that they tell me where a body is, so that a family can get closure. And I speak to the victim and I say to the victim's family, and I say, hey, we want to find out where your missing child is, or your sibling, or your spouse. Is it all right with you if we take death penalty off the table in order to ascertain where the remains are? And at least secure a conviction on the murder. So and then two, if they take a plea deal, or if they take a plea at that point, we don't have to go through all of the facts with the victims there and put them through the trauma of examination and cross-examination and all of that. So there is value there. And that's why I'm in favor of keeping the death penalty, at least as an option.
Well, you're going to have to make some very, very tough decisions, literally of life and death, when you're in the position as the new Salt Lake County District Attorney. And
I'm just there to make the decision to start the process.
Yeah.
Right? I'm just there to make the decision to start the process. The entire justice system is to protect defendants from me doing my job, right? Me trying to meet my burden, prove beyond a reasonable doubt, yada, yada, yada. The jury, the judge, the defense attorney, they're all there to protect you. The Constitution is there to protect you. You have certain rights. I can't violate them. I absolutely respect them, right? So this is where I get so upset with DAs that say we need to do away with the death penalty, because then you are making a life and death decision that the legislature has already made, that the people have already made, and they've decided we're going to leave it up to the people. And you've now robbed them from that. And you're encouraging them to get rid of that, or you're saying, I'm just not going to do death penalty. I mean, that to me is far more of an injustice than what I'm saying.
Fair enough. That's a strong statement.
I find it very disingenuous of these prosecutors who stand up and say, well, I'm not going to use the death penalty. Oh, well, good for you on your high horse. You just said that everyone else in your state is wrong and you're right. Forgive me, God King. Like that was sarcasm. Sorry, I'm not really great at it, but it's really disgusting to me. I don't put myself above the legislature. I don't put myself above the law. It goes back to that whole idea of respecting the law for the law's sake, and not putting yourself above the law. And the highest law is the Constitution. And the Constitution makes it very clear, about what the constraints on the government are. Cruel and unusual punishment. Some people can say, well, knowing that you're going to die is cruel and unusual. I don't agree. I simply don't agree.
Nor do I. So again, we're 3.5 hours into my 2-hour stream here. It is 1:30 in the morning. No. I'm not going to let us set a record tonight. My 2-hour stream with Drex last week went 7.5 hours, so that ain't gonna happen. I do need to at least say hi to the dogs, play with them for a little bit, and get to sleep at 2:00. And I know you've got a busy day ahead of you with your other job as well as campaigning. You're running a race literally until November. There's a couple more months left. 2 months. What are you gonna do in the last 2 months?
Yep, I've got to turn on the turbo engines and just run, just go. And that's where I'm at. So if you want to help me go, you like my takes, you don't like my takes, I don't care. You want to see some kind of change. You're not going to get everything you want with me, but here's what you will get. You'll get fairness. You'll get transparency. You'll get consistency. You'll get someone who wants to end plea deals with repeat violent offenders, someone who wants to be a voice for victims and stand up for victims, and who wants to have a positive relationship with our law enforcement partners. Bring back ride-alongs with the police. That's huge. A prosecutor being able to put themselves in the shoes of a police officer, tremendous. It also develops relationships between police officers and prosecutors, so that the prosecutor, when they read a statement, says, I know this officer, let me call them, rather than sending out a declination letter, which is a much easier and quicker thing to do. I want to hold people accountable. No more declination letters that say, in the interest of justice, the state will not pursue charges. If I'm going to be declining felony charges, you're going to know why. And there's going to be an evidentiary reason for that. If the evidence is there and the case can be brought, I'm bringing the case. And finally, giving a voice back to victims. We have like I said, over 50 programs to help defendants. And there's only one in the entire state to help victims. And in order to qualify for that program, you have to have secured a conviction against the defendant. So it is very difficult for victims to testify. It's very difficult for them to be heard, to feel heard. It's much easier to accept that your perpetrator, alleged perpetrator, may not spend time in jail if you knew that your prosecutor did their best and really put the evidence forward and made those arguments and spoke for you. It's so vitally important, and that's not happening right now. So if you believe in all those things, this police use of force is part of the job, but that's not why I'm running. I'm running because I believe in justice. I believe in holding people accountable. And the vast majority of cases that the DA deals with are, robberies, armed robberies, assaults, white collar crime, and some of the lower level offenses that you don't want to be pleading guilty to just because you can't afford an attorney. And I want our DAs to treat everyone fairly, to take each case holistically. And in order to do that, there needs to be leadership and vision and organization, better leadership within that office, so that we're not losing 35% of the DAs in the DA's office like they have right now, so that we don't see a 46% increase in homicide like we have in the past 4 years. So that's my sincere pitch to you guys. Please donate to my campaign. You can make a difference. We can make a difference together. I sincerely appreciate you taking the time, Legal Vices, to have me on your show.
We've got a couple more questions, if you don't mind.
Oh, sure. I'll stay in. And
one I think is very important. Barney Yamam, he's one of the insiders here, inciters here. Are victims only women?
No.
There you go. How's that for a straightforward and to the point answer? I know we talked about that last time.
Yeah, and I think we talked about the fact that we don't have a men's shelter here specifically for male domestic violence survivors. And there's not really a program to help them integrate and to feel welcome. And that's vitally important, because most female domestic violence survivors, they want to feel safe, and it's very hard to have men engage with them. So yeah, we can do a lot more there.
My Beavers unit said, read my super chat. No, I was saving your super chat for just this moment. I said, Danielle, you going to remember us when you're big time?
Oh, shut. Well, let me get big time first, and then we'll see. No, of course I'll remember. I'll remember everyone. I still remember the guy who came up and handed me my first $100 cash. His name's Carbon. Nicest old man you've ever met. So I remember these things. I remember you because, like I said, this race isn't about me. It's about you guys.
And Diamonds and Hannah said, we need her over here in Los Angeles.
You need something. I'm sorry. I wouldn't touch Los Angeles with a 10-foot pole. No offense. I'm confident enough to take care of the DA's office here to fix these problems. I don't feel even slightly capable of fixing what's been going on with Gascon.
And this woman is effing wild. If I lived in America, I'd vote for her.
Oh, hopefully not too wild to scare away the moderates and the people who understand that I'm a reasonable person.
And there's lots of other comments like these people from Finland wishing they could vote. Barney has said stay unbreaded. And they said there's 2 months. What are we doing in the last 2 months as we run up to this thing here?
So I was planning on having a debate with the Utah Debate Commission, and they have proven themselves useless once again. They do not do local races, even though my voting population, my voting block is 1.3 million voters, whereas that would be 3 congressional races tied together. But they don't want to host our debate. So the ACLU came to me and said, we would like to host the debate. I told them to go kick dirt, and I said, you're a racist organization. I have no interest in being associated with you at all. And I stand by that. They are racist. I'm sorry. Whenever you submit anything to the Supreme Court that says, yeah, any institution can make a decision based on race as one of the qualifying factors, institutions of higher learning in particular, where Asian Americans are disproportionately impacted by that type of policy. I mean, it's racist on its face. And I want nothing to do with that organization. And then their involvement with the Amber Heard, Johnny Depp scandal was enough for me to want nothing to do with them. They are not the same ACLU that they used to be. So hopefully the University of Utah has the spine to host a debate between me and Sim Gill. I would love to have Jason Perry be our moderator. And other than that, I have some TV appearances coming up.
Good.
I'll be running some ads and doing some mailers and just trying my best to get my voice out there, to get the story of these victims out there, and to educate Salt Lake County on what's going on. And I think most people, if they know what's going on, they'll elect a DA who genuinely cares about what's happening.
Well, there's two things that I think are very, very telling about your position. I know you told me last time, you told me when your husband and you went out for dinner when I was there on vacation. You have, and you've told us this tonight, you have people that come up to you and tell you these stories and ask you for help because they're not getting it from their current DA. And also the second thing, for the Fraternal Order of Police to support and back someone who is not an incumbent DA tells you a whole hell of a lot about what the police think about the current DA.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I mean, they're not even talking to the DA. So even for things like, I mean, there's certain cases where you needed the police to be able to testify, to talk. There's Brady laws, right? There's certain things like this that will require the police cooperation. They don't want to cooperate because they're so terrified of being, having this AP type article written against them via the DA's office, which is essentially what he did in the Omar Flores case. He literally said, I think this is unjustified, but I know that a jury wouldn't be able to convict you. So I'm just going to say it's unjustified, but not bringing charges. So essentially letting the deceased family sue the county for all it's worth, that to me is a direct conflict. That to me is a serious problem because you're representing the county in your position as DA. The county is essentially your client. And we're setting up the county for civil liability. That's a problem. So either it's justified, you're not bringing charges, or it's unjustified, you're bringing charges and you're handing it over to the jury because you are not the jury, you are not the judge. That is a type of egocentrism I cannot understand.
Oh, it looks like right here at the end, we've got a small raid from the Law Patrol, Australian lawyer. You just got a little bump in the numbers here. That's super. Thanks. But we're right at the end of the show. We've been here for 3.5 hours. Deeply appreciate you coming here for the end. But seriously, you've got a lot of work ahead of you. You've come an immeasurably long distance just in the past couple of months. And from someone who was guaranteed to be anointed in his position again, running unopposed, you're out there. People know you're out there. You're getting support from these major organizations that, for all intents and purposes, should be supporting the current DA. And you've got them in your pocket. So you're putting on a real viable, very, very good show because you're at the ground level. Like, you have the people coming to you asking about these things, not coming to him asking these things. And I think that's something that's going to be well in your favor. And you've got 2 more months to get through this, and good luck with that.
Thank you. And I'm just going to throw a little bit of shade out here on our local media. Media, do your jobs. Seriously, do your job. The First Amendment exists so that you can investigate cases, so that you can investigate this type of corruption, so that you can speak truth to power. Why have you been sitting around silent for years? Why have you been sitting around when these cases, if I announced that I was going to run for DA and literally every single time, I'm sorry, like you can see my chest getting red because I'm so pissed off about this. Every single time I walk out of my house, every single time I go to these events, a victim comes to me and says, this case has been taking too long. Please help me. Please tell me, is this normal? What should I expect? What should I be doing? What can I do to help the DA realize that this is a case to move forward on? My case was just declined and I have no idea why. All of those things should not be happening. And if the media was doing its job and holding the DA accountable for years, this wouldn't be happening. I have tried to get my op-eds published. Deseret News, I'm looking at you. Publish my op-ed. I dare you to. I dare you to publish it because I know you won't, because it's a direct attack, not on my opponent, but on his actions over the course of his time as DA. And you guys can't handle the truth. I'm throwing it out there. Prove me wrong. Publish my article and I will issue a full-fledged apology. I will come on here. I will do a mea culpa. You will see me cry. I'll do whatever you need to. I just want these stories to be heard. If I just do that, I've won. That's what needs to be happening. Sorry. So, by the way, the chat is going crazy over this Law Patrol person. I don't know who they are.
He's a lawyer in Australia.
Oh, did he have something fun to say?
No, he finished his stream and he dumped his viewers onto us.
Oh, well, thank you, all of you Law Patrol viewers, and I will go and check them out. Sorry if I gave an unintentional plug to him.
Nope, he's good people.
So you guys are amazing. Thank you. Donate. Give me your coin. Give me your money. Throw a coin to the Witcher. Whatever story, whatever song I have to sing. Please help me win this.
And that's a perfect way for you to emphasize this on the way out is what you just did. Again, everybody, if you want to know more about Dani, go to DA4DA. That's the number 4, DA4DA.com. There's a donation page there if you're inclined to donate to her war chest, the war red chest at this point, the red chest of furies. You got that going now.
I usually wear turtlenecks when I do debates and stuff because the judge always is like, "Are you okay, Ms. Ahn? You know, or are you having a rash?" Or I'm like, "I'm just mad."
And so again, there's still 2 months left. I want to have you back at least one more time before the election, so you can get out any election message next time. I wanted to have you on here to comment about these 2 Salt Lake City issues. If you've got time in the next 2 months at some point, maybe closer to the election, get you on to just do an election pitch. And Sam, if you're watching this, you are welcome here too.
Come debate me, Sam. Come talk to Legal Vices. Come clear the air with him, and then come and meet me on the debate stage. Oh, for everyone down there saying, "Hey, you should go on Rekieta's stream," go tell that to Nick. Okay, we've tried. I would love to have a 3-way conversation between Legal Vices, me, and Nick Rekieta. I think that would be phenomenal. And I just so you all know, I've been simping for Legal Vices and Nick Rekieta for a long time prior to running. So I'm honored to be on your stream. I'm so grateful that I have that you've given me this platform to tell the stories of these victims and to tell of the misdeeds of our current DA so that people know what's going on. I really do appreciate it.
Well, it's been a pleasure to have you here. It's been fun putting you on the spot a little bit, getting some impromptu answers. It's been fantastic, and hopefully we can do it again. We're on the way out here, so I just want to say thank you for giving your time. Thank you for taking your entire morning. I know you've got a lot of stuff to do. It's been a great nearly 4 hours. This is going to be up here so people can come back and look at it if they didn't see the whole thing. Thanks to the mods for keeping this thing relatively on the rails, as you always do. Thanks for the chatters. I have the best chat on the internet. The super chats are great. We enjoy it all, and we'll be back tomorrow with just a casual, light evening of watching. I don't know if you've seen it, Dani. The Beverly Hills Bar Association interview that Ben Chu and Camille Vasquez did a couple of weeks ago. But,
oh no, I would love to watch that. I love Camille.
Yeah, we're just going to watch that tomorrow. They spent about an hour with the president of the Beverly Hills Bar Association talking about their experiences, what it was like to represent him, their own personal views on the thing. So we're just going to watch that casually tomorrow, just for sort of a chill stream. And then we're doing on Thursday the opening statements for the prosecution in the People versus O.J. Simpson trial. Going to go back
Why
old
didn't
school.
you have me come and do something chill instead of trying to get all these hot takes and ruin my campaign? Thanks a lot. Now I'm going to have all these people thinking that I'm okay with people being beaten or something, which I'm not, clearly. I don't know if I've couched all of my spicy takes enough, but let me couch them further.
You have.
I am a reasonable, kind, considerate, loving person, and I just want to do what's right. That's fundamentally what it is.
And that's why you're qualified for this job.
Thank you. I really appreciate you saying that. That means the world to me. I appreciate your support and the support of all your viewers. I hope you guys have a great day, and I hope you get some good rest, good, well-deserved rest.
And we'll catch you all tomorrow. Thank you for everyone that was here. We'll see you all tomorrow. Have a good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, and make sure to always enjoy those legal devices. Bye.